the rest of the country. Remember, this is part of the bill on what it entails, and this afternoon members of the Senate will be proceeding to a committee of the whole House to consider this bill. There are various amendments that have been proposed by the chairperson standing committee on finance and budget, and of course these details will be brought forth before the committee of the whole House, and members will have a chance to understand which amendments are being made to this bill. And at the entrance of the Senate chambers, the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Jeffa Kingi, is in the chambers. He will be presiding over this afternoon sitting. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast brought to you by PBU in partnership with KBC. Good afternoon.
Almighty God, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor and blessings us, your servants, whom we have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests you have committed to our charge. Amen. Do we have quorum, clerk? Sergeant at Arms, kindly ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
Well, the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Kingi, has just directed that the quorum bell be rung for 10 minutes. Of course, this is to allow members to be able to walk into the chambers to enable the House achieve its requisite quorum for the House business to kick off. And this is according to the Senate standing order at the quorum, at the commencement of the House business. Standing order number 39 on quorum of the Senate is that the quorum of the Senate or a committee of the whole shall be 15 senators. So with that, the commencement of the House, the number is not achieved yet, and thereby the Speaker has directed that the bell be rung. Standing order number 40 on the quorum at the commencement of a sitting of the Senate indicates that if there is no quorum present when the chair is taken at the time appointed for a sitting of the Senate, the Speaker shall immediately, after the prayer, order the bell to be rung for 10 minutes. The standing order 40 number 2 indicates that if no quorum is present at the expiration of the 10 minutes, the Speaker may direct that the bell be rung for a further 10 minutes, and if there is still no quorum present, the Speaker shall adjourn the Senate forthwith to the next sitting. So if you're just joining us, is that currently is a quorum bell that is underway as directed by the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Kingi. Remember, there is a committee of the whole House that is scheduled for this afternoon sitting, and if the quorum is not achieved, because we understand that according to the House standing order is that even the committee of the whole requires a quorum of 15 senators. So the committee of the whole on the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bill number 3 of 2023, that is lined up in today's order of business, is also subject to the quorum of the Senate members this afternoon. Well, members will also be resuming a debate on the prompt payment bill, Senate Bill number 8 of 2022. This is by Honorable Mariam Sheikh Omar, the prompt payment bill, Senate Bill number 8 of 2022. It is at the second stage, and debate already kicked off. So this afternoon, debate on this bill will be a resumption of a similar debate that was interrupted on the Wednesday of 12th April, the year 2023, in the afternoon sitting. The principal object of this bill is to put in place a legal framework to facilitate prompt payment for supply of goods, works and services procured by government entities both at the national and county level. The principal object is to put in place a legal framework to facilitate prompt payment for supply of goods, works and services procured by government entities, both at the national and county government. This bill provides for the processing of payment. The bill also requires that a procuring entity shall pay for the goods, works or services provided by the prescribed payment date. Failure to pay amount due within the stipulated time, a procuring entity shall be liable to pay an interest calculated on the basis of the central bank base rates. This is a bill whose debate already kicked off on the floor of the House, but was interrupted on the afternoon sitting on the Wednesday, 12th April, the year 2023, and this bill is lined up for debate on this afternoon's order of business at the Senate chambers. Currently is a 10-minute quorum bell as per the standing orders of the Senate that at the commencement of House business, if a quorum of 15 members is not present in the chambers, then the bell will be rung for 10 minutes to allow members who are yet to walk into the chambers to be able to get into the chambers. And once the House achieves its quorum, then the clerk will alert the Speaker, who will call the House to order for the commencement of the business. The motion by the Senator for Machakos County, Honorable Agnes Kavindu, on the compensation to the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States Embassy in Nairobi is also lined up for consideration. Debate also on this bill already kicked off. As you can see, members are walking in there. That's the minority leader, Honorable Stewart Mazayo, accompanied by fellow members, and we are hoping that in no time the 15-member quorum will be achieved. The motion on the compensation of the Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States Embassy in Nairobi is a motion by the Honorable Member for Machakos County, Honorable Agnes Kavindu, and it is lined up for consideration this afternoon. Its debate already kicked off on the 2nd of May 2023, but was interrupted, and it has a balance of 1 hour and 46 minutes. This motion seeks to have the House resolve that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs advances friendship and cooperation between the United States and Kenya by supporting the eligibility of Kenyan and American victims and their personal representatives, surviving spouses, and next of kin in the Victim Compensation Fund pursuant to the Justice for United States Victims of State-Sponsored Terrorism Act. The motion also seeks to have the Senate resolve that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs partners with the Ministry of Health to explore subsidized medical treatment for the surviving victims of the bomb blast. The quorum bell is still on. A 15-member quorum is required in the chambers before the House commences its business. And we have seen members getting into the chambers. We believe that the number is about to be achieved. And once the number is achieved, then the clerk will alert the speaker, who will call the House to order for the commencement of the House. The Honorable Senator Karungo Athangwa will be presenting a petition by Mr. Francis Wainaina Njuguna Mbogo concerning alleged forgery, perjury, and illegal alienation of land. The Speaker will also be presenting a petition by Ms. Ruth W. Kabui and other P1 teachers regarding payment of salary arrears owed to P1 teachers with A-level academic qualifications from the year 1996 to the year 2010. Pursuant to Standing Order 53-1, various senators will be seeking statements, and the Senator for Kisii County, Honorable Richard Onyonka, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Health regarding the state of operations at the Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital. The Senator for Kisii County, again, Honorable Richard Onyonka, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Health regarding the closure of Nyamarambe Health Center.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honorable Senators, I take this opportunity to welcome you back from the short recess. I hope you've had time to meet with your constituents, friends and families over the past 2 weeks. Part 3 of the Senate calendar commences today and will run until the rise of the Senate on Thursday, 29th June 2023. Now, Honorable Senators, as we commence this part of this Senate calendar, it is expected that the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget will table a report on the County Allocation of Revenue Bill 2023. The passage of this bill will be followed by the introduction of the county government's Additional Allocation Bill and the respective cash disbursement schedules. These are crucial financial instruments that, by their nature, allocate funds to county governments, and also the passage of these instruments facilitate county governments to prepare their respective budgets in time for the next financial year. That begins on 1st of July. I therefore urge all honorable senators to be available in the Senate to consider and pass these legislative and financial instruments. Other business before the Senate includes 26 bills, of which 21 are the second reading stage, and 5 are the committee of the whole stage. 15 petitions are pending before select committees, and 24 pending motions. In addition, there are a number of questions and statements filed and will be scheduled in the order paper appropriately. I take this opportunity to urge standing committees to prioritize processing of legislative business and to table reports as required by the standing orders. You will recall, honorable senators, that just before we proceeded on recess, we began implementation of the procedure on questions in the Senate. 2 sittings were held on 23rd of April and 3rd of May 2023, where cabinet secretaries appeared before the Senate to respond to questions. As is expected, at the beginning of most new processes, there will be a number of teething challenges, and so we have faced a number which continue to be addressed by the Senate Business Committee to iron them out. One of the major decisions that the committee has made, and therefore necessitates a communication to the Senate, is the requirement to have only 3 cabinet secretaries at any one sitting. This measure will ensure that there is adequate time for the Senate to interrogate the responses from cabinet secretaries. This measure will be implemented from tomorrow, Wednesday, 24th of May, 2023, during the morning sitting. As we progress, we will continue to learn and make the necessary adjustments to improve on procedure for questions. I also appeal to honorable senators to continue familiarizing themselves with the framework on questions as well as the attendant guidelines. Honorable senators, during the recess, the Senate leadership held a candid and constructive deliberations on the processing of legislative business in the Senate and resolved to work harmoniously in the discharge of our constitutional mandates. Focus will therefore be given to business scheduled in the order paper, as a number of bills and motions are critical to the operations of county governments. This will sustain a healthy and robust debate and the differing opinions and perspectives that will form amendments to bills and impact on government policy. On the other hand, and in accordance with the communication issued before the Senate proceeded on recess, the Chair will not hesitate to drop any business for which the respective member is not available in the House. These measures are necessary to ensure that the legislative agenda of the Senate remains on track, and I implore you, honorable senators, to work closely with the Senate leadership in delivering on the aspirations of the people of Kenya. Honorable senators, in conclusion, I take this opportunity to impress upon each one of us to rededicate ourselves to the execution of our constitutional mandate in service to our great country. I also wish to state that my office of the Senate leadership, and the Secretariat are always at your disposal to facilitate you to do your work. I wish you fruitful deliberations and wish you, honorable senators, every success during this session. I thank you. Honorable senators, I also do have a further communication to make. Before I do that, Majority Leader and Senator Issa, kindly proceed to have your seat. Honorable senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon of a visiting delegation from the Parliament of Zimbabwe. The delegation comprises members of the thematic Committee on Peace and Security and its staff who are on a benchmarking visit. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that they may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. The Honorable Senator Dr. Prinyatwa David, the chairperson of the committee. The Honorable Senator Chimbuzi Alice. The Honorable Senator Kumalo Nomalanga. The Honorable Senator Komichi Mogeni. The Honorable Senator Chief Makumbe. The Honorable Senator Mathuthu Themba. The Honorable Senator Muhadi Tambuzai. Ms. Faith Manhivi. Ms. Tapiwa Sukuta, a researcher. Honorable senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome and wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Again, I wish to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon of a visiting delegation from the Parliament of Zimbabwe. The delegation is undertaking a benchmarking visit in the Center for Parliamentary Studies and later participate in the 3rd Annual Parliamentary Symposium to be held in Naivasha, Nakuru County from the 26th to the 27th May 2023. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that they may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. Mr. Kennedy Mugove Chokuda. The Clerk of Parliament, Mrs. Nomasonto Audrey Sunga. Deputy Clerk, Mr. Stewart Jailos. Director, Human Resources, Mr. Nesbat Samu. Ms. Senators, on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation and wish them a fruitful visit. I will allow the majority whip on behalf of the government side to make very brief welcoming remarks, and thereafter I will allow the minority leader also to make his very brief welcoming remarks. Proceed in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, is indeed a privilege and makes us very happy that such a high-profile delegation from our sister country, Zimbabwe, has come visiting to this Senate. Mr. Speaker, as the leaders from Zimbabwe might know, we share a lot in common in the sense that we both became republics after fighting it out with the colonists. We remember fondly, Mr. Speaker, what was then called Rhodesia. Today, it has been changed to Zimbabwe. Mr. Speaker, we remember fondly how we used to go to Blantyre. Now that has changed to the African name. Here in Kenya, dear colleagues from the southern part of Africa, we did not adopt that procedure of changing all our names. But maybe if you guys had come before us, we would have learned from you. Congratulations, you are most welcome. Make sure that before you go back to Zimbabwe, you sample some of the special sports in Nairobi, and indeed they are there. And if you have money to spend, you can choose to go far west. There is a city there called Kakamega, the only city in Africa where there is bullfighting. You come and enjoy bullfighting in Kakamega. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at times as it is at the tradition, allow me to, now that you've given a chance to the bullfighter to represent the majority side, who is the majority whip, allow me to also give a chance to my minority whip, Senator Ledama Olekina, to come forth. I donate my time to Senator Ledama Olekina, my minority whip. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the minority side, I wish to extend a warm welcome, and I actually join you, to welcoming the distinguished senators and the members of staff from the Parliament of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a country that most of us have read a lot about. It has taught us a lot in terms of leadership, from the worst to the best, in terms of the changes where each African country is going through. Some of us are very happy to see Zimbabwe during the spring period because of the beautiful flowers all over. There are some beautiful pictures which are taken, and when you are told that's an African country, you see how clean it is, and we like to emulate. We have a lot to share as brothers, and I do hope that one day this African continent will become one country so that we can take pride of all the resources that we have. Some of the big challenges that we're going through as a country, and I'm happy because I'm speaking to leaders like us, is on the issue of the GDP, debt to GDP ratio in each of the African countries. I think it's about time that we all think and look inside our hearts and ask ourselves tough questions. Why is it that every time when we travel and we go to the West, we see countries which are clean, countries which the citizens come together to be able to build that country. But we in Africa, Kenya and Zimbabwe alike, we spend most of our time destroying our country, robbing it, denying citizens who elect us to come here basic services. So as you visit, I want, when you go back to Zimbabwe, to tell your people in Zimbabwe that in Africa, in Kenya today, we're asking very tough questions about the future generations. Are we going to leave this African continent better than we found it? Or are we also going to follow the trajectory of those who came before us and who decided to line their pockets? I welcome you and enjoy your visit in Kenya. Thank you very much.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Is the Honorable Senator Karungo Thagwa here? He had a petition to present. That petition is deferred. Honorable Senators, I hereby report that a petition has been submitted to the Senate by Ms. Ruth Kabui and other P1 teachers concerning salary arrears for P1 teachers with A-level academic qualifications from 1996 to 2010. As you're aware, under Article 1191 of the Constitution, and I quote, "Every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation." Honorable Senators, the silent issues raised in the petition are as follows. That in July 1996, the then Directorate of Personnel Management of the Teacher Service Commission issued a scheme of service for non-graduate teachers, given the requirements for appointment and promotion for non-graduate teachers. The said schemes were implemented by the Commission, after which an attendant regrading was required. That in July 1996, the then Minister of Education, Science and Technology, through the Chief Inspector of Schools, requested all district education officers, municipal education officers, and City Director of Education to submit the names of trained primary school teachers, 1P1 with A-level academic qualifications countrywide to the ministry. That thereafter, the ministry proceeded to grade untrained A-level teachers who had attended a 2-week program at Kagumo and Bondo Teachers Training colleges to secondary school teachers 1, that is S1, locking other A-level primary school teachers P1 who had not attended the course. This resulted to complaints by the primary school teachers, P1 A-level trained teachers. That another group of approved teachers, ATS-1V, were also promoted in the year 1996. The then scheme of service for non-graduate teachers stipulated that the existing secondary school teachers, that is S1, promoted to primary school teachers P1, were to convert to approved teachers 4, while teachers with diploma certificates would convert to diploma teachers. And additionally, in July 2010, the primary school teachers P1 were also promoted but were not issued with promotion letters. That the teachers who were promoted in the year 1996 are yet to receive their salary arrears since the date of promotion, which is contrary to standard labor practices. And that the petitioners have made efforts to have this matter addressed by the relevant authorities, and all of which have failed to give a satisfactory response. The petitioners, therefore, pray to the Senate that it intervenes in this matter with a view to recommending to the National Treasury and Economic Planning to factor in budget to enable payment of salary arrears to the teachers. Now, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, I shall now allow comments, observations, and clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Honorable Senators, you may walk in. Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to comment on this very, very important petition. Mr. Speaker, The Constitution is clear that any Kenyan who thinks he has a matter which is unresolved can bring it to Parliament, which includes Senate. And these teachers have walked a long journey. They have been trying to make these particular claims over a long time. They have gone into different government departments and did not find the necessary assistance they were looking for. And I believe Senate, the committee dealing with education, and also Senate as a whole, is the power given to it by the Constitution to resolve this matter, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there has been many issues dealing with the teachers, and teachers are very, very important, you know, from the nursery school teacher to the primary school teacher to the secondary school teacher. There was rationalization of P1 and the S1. And even we have a lot of teachers who have become graduates, who have pursued a degree, you know, privately, and are now qualified. But unfortunately, the salary is not commensurate to what the teacher is qualified for. So I believe a scheme of service for all these teachers can be polished, can be reconsidered, and with public participation or by consulting the relevant bodies dealing with the teachers. This is NAT and the stakeholders in the education sector, and also experts in the area of remuneration, and people dealing with that particular expertise have an opportunity. Even when this particular petition has been presented, the presenters, together with other interested Kenyans, can approach the committee, and ordinarily the practice is that they are able to input to the committee, and the committee is able to serve Kenyans better. So I believe all teachers should be treated fairly. The Constitution requires that there is fair and equal treatment to every Kenyan, so that whatever they have worked for can be paid to them, and they can continue with the good work of educating the country. Mr. Speaker, I'm personally a product of teachers, and very kind teachers in makwiny, and I believe a teacher is so important that we leave them with our children, and they polish them, they teach them how to be better Kenyans, they teach them the national anthem at a very early age, the Eastern African anthem, and it is through the hands of many teachers these students proceed to high school and even to university and end up even in this Senate. So I really pray and support that these teachers be given what is rightful to them. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Okanyuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this petition by one Ruth. And I think it's so many years down the line for these teachers to actually be compensated. From 1996 to 2010, that's a very long time, and I know there must have been very many attempts trying to intervene on behalf of these teachers. The other time we were actually discussing on teachers who had marked the examinations, who are yet to even be compensated, while we've had the students who performed well report to schools, and life has definitely moved on as usual. So while I share their frustrations, I really feel we need to accord not just teachers, but there are so many other professionals who volunteer their service to this country, and such might actually demoralize other young people who aspire to join these professions. I'm a product of these teachers way from my village in Kenya, and it is as a result of the efforts that those teachers put that I can represent other young people who aspire to be leaders of this country in this honorable house. So, Mr. Speaker, I join other senators in supporting this petition, and that it actually deserves the attention it requires. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Issa Boy.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika kunipa fursa hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii petition imekuja wakati mzuri sana kwa sababu kwangu mimi katika kaunti ya Kwale nina kesi nyingi sana za walimu kama hawa ambao hawajalipa pesa zao. Ni jambo la kusikitisha sana hasa kwa walimu. Walimu wamesomesha wanafunzi wamefaulu, lakini utakuta kwamba walimu mpaka leo wanalia wanataka kulipa pesa zao. Hata sijui shida bwana Spika, shida iko wapi? Mimi nina kesi karibu 5 sahihi, karibu 5 za walimu. Wengine karibu wawili wameshafariki. Kuna mwingine juzi alipata ajali. Hata sijui shida iko wapi katika serikali. Kwa nini Mheshimiwa Spika, hii wizara au hii tume ya PSC kwa nini hawalipi wanafunzi hao? Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga sana ni statement ambayo imeletwa petition hii wakati huu, na lazima tuhakikishe sisi maseneta tuweze kusimama imara, hawa walimu waweze kulipwa kwa wakati wake. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga sana petition hii, na hiyo komiti ambayo utaagizia mheshimiwa ichunguze basi ifanye kwa haraka sana, kwa sababu it's all over county, si Kwale peke yake, hata Mombasa, ukisikia Kilifi, walimu wananungunika kwa sababu pesa zao. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi na support sana hii petition hii. Thank you very much.
Senator Osotsi.
Mr. Speaker, I also want to join the rest of the members to say that I support the petition. Honorable Speakers, teachers go through a lot of problems. Just the other week, we were discussing a matter here involving the non-payment of to the teachers who had marked exams. It's taken too long, and now this issue of P1 teachers, Mr. Speaker, is an issue that is affecting most of our counties. I think TSC should take charge and resolve these issues. Mr. Speaker, I was just discussing with my colleague here, Senator Mutata, on the matter of implementation of the resolutions of this petition. We have had so many issues touching on teachers, which have been processed either in the National Assembly or here. But the TSC has had nothing, it has seen nothing, and it has not acted. I know in the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, they passed a motion against the delocalization policy. Mr. Speaker, I can say that up to now, the TSC has not moved in to resolve that problem of delocalization. And even this, Mr. Speaker, I am sure TSC will not move in with speed to deal with this problem of non-payment to the P1 teachers. I think something has to be done. I know TSC keeps on saying there are independent commission, but this House, Mr. Speaker, has the powers to deal with matters concerning the people of Kenya. And one of it is issues touching on teachers. So the TSC CEO, Madam Nancy Macharia, he is so powerful, Mr. Speaker, that you can even go to his office and he decides not to see you. We have gone there so many times. You sit in the waiting room for hours, and she cannot see you, and then eventually she sends the PA to come and see you. Mr. Speaker, it is a high time that this country gets rid of state officers who behave larger than life, like Nancy Macharia. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to support the motion and the statement that actually what is happening in TSC is actually a very, very unfortunate situation. That many teachers are having a lot of problems. Teachers actually are the people who work in every corner of this country. They work in the worst conditions. They work in the most insecure areas. However, they are not given what they deserve to be given as teachers. Mr. Speaker, TSC has become an entity of its own. TSC actually, the CEO is unapproachable. That if anybody has a problem, even getting hearing is a problem. So I think it's high time that we need to sort these problems. Teachers are actually the backbone of this country. They develop all kind of human resource. And therefore, we need to at least give attention to various issues that are affecting. Even the pension actually are getting problem these days. Their salaries have been delayed. They have been posted haphazardly without any due consideration for teachers. With those few remarks, I beg to support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mudama Kavindu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to join the rest of the senators to support this petition by Ruth. Mr. Speaker, this issue of teachers retiring and not even getting their benefits, it's not only with Ruth. I don't know which county she comes from, but it is across all the counties in Kenya. And it is so sad to hear and to know that from 1996 to date, there are people who are still waiting for their compensation and their retirement benefits. Mr. Speaker, it's very sad because NAT is there and they should be mindful of the welfare of the teachers, and KUPPET is also there, Mr. Speaker. RBA, Retirement Benefits Authority, is also there. We should be really concerned about the retirement benefits of the teachers. Mr. Speaker, all of us, when we work, we want, once we retire, to get our benefits so that we can continue with life. And these teachers, from 1996 to date, those are many, many years when they are still waiting for their benefits. And I'm sure majority of them has already died while waiting for their benefits so that they can continue with life. And they face a lot of challenges. Mr. Speaker, it's my prayer and my hope that where this petition is taken to the Committee of Education, they will deal with it very urgently. And I'm sure with the leadership of the able chair, Senator Newto, will be able to deal with this, and these teachers must be compensated. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Ledama.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, this is one of those petitions that makes me wonder what it is that we do in this country. You take teachers, you say, let us educate them, let us put them through a training, you increase their salaries. 27 years after, they are still crying that those increments they are yet to receive. What exactly are we doing, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, this is an issue which, when you read the petition, you wonder whether we represent the people we say we represent. My views are a little bit unorthodox when it comes to issues to do with personal welfare. Why is it that we ourselves here as leaders, whenever we are promised an increment, every year, all of us here as leaders, we get some form of a salary increment? Why is it that that is never delayed and not paid? The day you delay a member of parliament increment is the day they'll shut down the country. Why can't we treat the teachers, who are the ones who educated us and gave us the wisdom for us to come here and represent them? Mr. Speaker, this does not even ought to become a petition, because one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to issues of petitions is that, okay, we are here, any member by the Constitution can be able to present a petition to this House, but what happened after that? We interrogate the matter, we call those people, and then after that, we take our findings and we hand over the findings to the petitioner. How is it going to help them? Mr. Speaker, I'd like to beseech you to handle this thing differently, because this is another crisis we have, similar to the one of former councillors who served this country diligently. And while current members of the county assemblies are getting a gratuity or pension, those ones were forgotten. Every so often, we talk about budget. We know the Senate doesn't deal with the issue of budget. I wish our colleagues in the lower house would be able to, so motto, take on this matter and add that budget there and reduce all these budgets of tea, budgets of travel, and at least pay these teachers from 1996, 27 years ago. In fact, the distinguished senator nominated, who is looking at me, Tabitha, was not born then. And now, look at her. She's serving this house, representing those teachers. And their salaries increment, they have not been paid until today. What exactly are we doing here? I want to call upon the commissioners, the TSC commissioners, led by my good friend Nancy. Please, this is about time that you need to now ask yourself what it is that you're doing in that office. And I want to call upon my colleagues in the lower house. We'll be talking about budget. And the only thing which is in our head right now, which is going to divide this country into two, is the issue of the finance bill, which is going to tax those people again. A basic salary of a teacher, Mr. Speaker, is 27,000 shillings to 30,000 shillings. What is 27,000 shillings in this country? That's a teacher who has made even the current occupier of the house in the hill to be there. I think, Mr. Speaker, these are issues which are not only a motive, but they are things which must separate leaders from followers. There are things which must separate us, this house now. You know, some of these things, Mr. Speaker, if you tell me that you will amend our standing order so that we can call those commissioners here, I'll agree. I'll agree for them to come here, and by the time they're walking out of this place, we have a resolution. Mr. Speaker, I dare say if you look at the budget of the Ministry of Education, and yet some of these teachers here who are promoted, we no longer have something called P1. There's no P1 anymore. I think it's called what? Grade what? If you look at the budget of the Ministry of Education, just like the Ministry of Health, you'll be shocked. The amount of money they get, yet some of these services are devolved. Then why don't we ask ourselves tough questions now, Mr. Speaker? That when we are talking about amending the Constitution or bringing changes, why don't we then devolve education fully, entirely, like other countries? There are other jurisdictions where it's a school district that has to care about the salaries, the benefits of teachers. We are in a very, very tough year. This year, cost of sugar will be more than the cost of a bag of cement. And if we don't even fight to increase this little money, and it's little money, compared to the amount of money we waste. We waste a lot of money. We employ CASs. We give them a lot of money. We fight in courts. If you take a budget of those CASs, you'll send that money to these teachers. I think it's about time that we become our real brothers' keepers and we fight for them. Mr. Speaker, I want to request that when you give instructions and you commit this petition to the Committee on Education, you know, I know the standing order says 60 days, but Mr. Speaker, let them give us a status update on actually what is happening. So that this year, you know, earlier on when we were sitting at the House Business, we were very happy with the work that the distinguished senators, women in this House, members of KEOPA, are doing. You know, those are things that have got results, and we commend them when they do that. You know, they went with the support of your office, Mr. Speaker, the support of the Secretariat. They went to our prisons. They paid fees, you know, penalty, what are they called? Fines. They paid fines for petty offenders. That is commendable. Now, the same spirit, and I want to request the same leaders, Senator Hamida, thank you very much, my dear sister, as a chair, take on this because they are teachers, they are mothers, Most teachers here are mothers. Take on this issue, walk to Nancy's office, and ensure that at least they give them. If there is anything that I'll be happy, increase my tax to pay these teachers, do it. But don't increase my tax to pay some form of housing allowance. If you cannot even pay those teachers their increment, how are you going to be able to give them this house? Come on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to address this matter. I rise to support this petition by Ruth Kafue. Mr. Speaker, I also want to give my assurance that as a Committee of Education, we are committed to the matters that affect teachers and schools in general, Mr. Speaker. And only last week, we were able, Mr. Speaker, to win one battle that we have been fighting for teachers who retired between 1997 and 2003, Mr. Speaker. And in this war, Mr. Speaker, what we came to learn was the problem, was that the benefit scheme for public servants is not contributory, at least up to those, but I think it has started being contributory now. So that now, Mr. Speaker, when it is time to pay teachers or civil servants their salary, their benefits, then money has to be drawn from the consolidated fund. But unlike NSSF, where employees contribute and therefore their money is set aside, Mr. Speaker, that has been the problem. As for these teachers that had A-level qualifications, Mr. Speaker, and for the benefit of those who may not understand, like the one we have been just told by Senator Ledama was born 27 years ago, this was advanced level education, Mr. Speaker. These are teachers, these are people that had taken another examination after a Form 4 examination for the benefit of those that then came just the other day. And this was an extra qualification, Mr. Speaker, so that somebody was still able to train as a P1 teacher after Form 4. But these are teachers, these are people who had chosen to get into another level of education, advanced level, before they trained as teachers. And so that sacrifice that they made, Mr. Speaker, of going to school again for 2 years and then becoming P1s just like those that had trained as P1 teachers after Form 4, this is something that should be respected, Mr. Speaker. And that is why these arrears must be paid the soonest possible. I want to assure this House that my committee is able and willing to prosecute this matter. And although Senator Ledama has left, I had wanted to assure him that the Committee of Education is able to deal with this matter, that we may not have to go to deal with it through the women parliamentarians in this House. So, Mr. Speaker, if anybody was casting aspersions on the ability of the Committee on Education, I want to assure all and sundry that we are capable. And should we need the help of women parliamentarians, Mr. Speaker, we have them. Senator Kavindu is there, Senator Professor Kamar, who is a very experienced educationist, is there. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are equal to the task, and we are going to prosecute this matter. We are going to call or invite those that are responsible, TSC, Treasury, and all that are responsible. So I want to assure Ruth, wherever she is, that this is a matter that if and when you refer it to us, Mr. Speaker, we are going to deal with it in the best way we can. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that opportunity.
Honourable Senators, the time allocated for intervention to this petition is well spent, and therefore, pursuant to Standing Order 238-1, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Education. And in terms of Standing Order 238-2, the committee is required, in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer, to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. It is so directed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I hereby wish to present this petition, which has been submitted to the Senate by Mr. Francis Wainaina Njogona on behalf of Bogo's Family Welfare Group of Mbare ya Bogo, concerning historical injustices and illegal alienation of LR number 7153/1, 7153/2, 7153/R, also known as LR 12825. As you are aware, under Article 119(1) of the Constitution, and I quote, "Every person has a right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority, including enacting, amending, or repealing any legislation." Honorable Speaker, sir, the salient issues raised in these petitions are: A, that Kasarini Estate Company Limited, occupying the land LR number 7153/1, 7153/2, 7153/R, also known as LR 12825, was formed in Britain. The estate occupied the land as a demonstration farm from 1932, while coexisting with the original owner, Mbogo Wainaina family. That a group of 5 families with 10 members allegedly formed Kasarini Farmers Cooperative Society Limited, which was registered on 10th July 1974, in a bid to illegally acquire the Kasarani Estate Company Limited land. That Kasarini's Farmers Cooperative Society Limited certificate was disowned by the Commissioners of Cooperative Development in response to an inquiry by the National Land Commission. Despite the Commissioner of Cooperative Development disowning Kasarani Farmers Cooperative Society Limited, the society was issued with a title on the said land on 18th December 1981. D, that Kasarini Farmers Cooperative Society Limited have since purported to have bought the land from Kasarini Estate Company Limited, disregarding the ownership of the land by Mbogo Wainaina family. And E, that the petitioners have made efforts to have the matter addressed by the National Land Commission and other relevant authorities, all of which have failed to give a satisfying response. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the petitioner therefore prays that the Senate investigate this matter with a view of establishing the rightful owner of the land LR number 7153/1, 7153/2, 7153/R, also known as LR number 12825, and recommend that compensation to be rendered to the Bogos family for the historical injustices suffered and damages for the said land. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, I shall now allow comments, observation, or clarifications in relation to the petition for not more than 30 minutes. Shirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want from the onset to support Senator Karungo Wathang'wa that land is an emotive issue, Mr. Speaker. And anybody who is dispossessed of land is not good, because any disposition of land by anybody should be done within the law, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, and therefore I think it has been horrendous for the family. And as a Senator, and I believe our committees, as one of the chairs of education, has insisted that they have capacity and ability to address, Mr. Speaker, all these issues that have been raised in this petition. Mr. Speaker, it's not lost to us that any part of this country you go at family level, at communal level, there will be always, Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of land grievances. And therefore, I think the biggest is to ensure, Mr. Speaker, everybody has a title deed, Mr. Speaker. And I think the commitment of government has to always have the title. Mr. Speaker, you know, all of us are Africans, unless there are people who are new from Jerusalem, is that when you don't own land from my community where I am, you are not a man, despite having other things, Mr. Speaker. So this is a very important matter that must be dispensed with, Mr. Speaker. And of course, looking at the value, Mr. Speaker, I'm not saying not having a title deed superintends what a man should have, but the bottom line is that it gives you identity, it gives you sense of belonging, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, and therefore you can see even what is happening in South Rift and North Rift, where allegations of tea machines, tea plucking machines are being burned down, Mr. Speaker, and many others, because of the land. Because the people from where I come, Nandi and Kericho and part of South Rift and North Rift, always have a feeling that they were dispossessed of their rightful ownership of land, Mr. Speaker. And the youthful leaders like Senator Uhuru Odinga, Mr. Speaker, have this institutional memory on the history of land struggle, and it forms at the core, at the basis, Mr. Speaker. And I know where Senator Madzayo, retired judge, and yourself comes from. There is still a big challenge in terms of land ownership, land possession, and many others, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I think from where I sit, I want to congratulate Senator Karungo Wadhangwa and say this family should be given justice. If it is their right, they have suffered this. And Mr. Speaker, we should celebrate all Kenyans. A few minutes ago, you read about the petition by teachers. Now we have a petition by a member of public. It shows the confidence many Kenyans have for the Senate to address these issues, Mr. Speaker. We have confidence that women from Kewaba, from Senate, can visit a prison, Mr. Speaker, and pay fines and give them food. We also have confidence with the Senate, Mr. Speaker, that we can dispense and address an injustice across anywhere of this country, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I congratulate Senator Karungo Wadhangwa and support this petition and hope the family will get justice in this matter. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Lelegwe. Senator Kenywa.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii. Kuanzia mwanzo nataka kusema kwamba naunga mkono dua hii ambayo imeletwa na Mheshimiwa Karungo Wadhangwa. Kwa sababu ya familia ya Mbogo wa Inaina kwa shamba lao kuchukuliwa, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, mambo ya mashamba katika Jamhuri yetu ya Kenya imekuwa ni ndoda sugu. Watu wengi wamekuwa wanagandamizwa na wale ambao wanafikiria wako na nguvu kushinda wengine. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, nataka kukubaliana na Mheshimiwa Karungo Wadhangwa ya kwamba familia Mbogo wa Inaina imefanya vizuri kuleta taarifa hii. Na wamefanya jambo lingine la muhimu kwa kusema ya kwamba wanapatia jukumu kamati ambayo inahusika, na ni kamati ya mashamba na ya mazingira ambayo iko katika seneti hii. Na wana uhakika na wanaamini ya kwamba itaweza kutenda haki. Ndiposa wanasema kulingana na taarifa yenyewe, Bwana Spika, wanasema ya kwamba itafute ni nani mwenye shamba lile kamili. Hawasemi ni lao, hawasemi ni nani, kwa sababu ni watu ambao ni watu wanapenda ukweli. Na wana imani na kamati ya Senate ya kwamba itafanya haki. Na Bwana Spika, mimi ningependa ya kwamba hii familia ya Mbogo wa Inaina itendewe haki. Waweze kupewa fidia kwa yale ambayo wamepitia, kugandamizwa ambao wamepitia, Bwana Spika. Na ni vizuri wakati kamati inashughulikia jambo hili iangalie, kwa sababu swala hili si hili peke yake katika sehemu hiyo ya Kiambu, Bwana Spika. Ukitembea sehemu nyingi za nchi yetu ya Kenya kuna shida za mashamba, Bwana Spika. Na shida za mashamba, Bwana Spika, inafanya watu mpaka watoane uhai, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuuliza kamati hiyo, wakati inashughulikia swala hili, ishughulikie hata sehemu zingine, kama ukitembea Laikipia, Bwana Spika, upande wa Marmanet, Bwana Spika, watu walifurushwa kutoka mashamba yao na wanapaswa kupewa fidia, Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, ukitembea sehemu za Matanya vile vile kuna lile shida, Bwana Spika. Unapata watu wametolewa katika mashamba yao, wanaishi katika maisha ya uchochole, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo, kwa sababu Wakenya wana imani na kamati na seneti, na hasa kamati hii ambayo inaongozwa na Mheshimiwa Methu. Nina hakika watafuatilia lile jambo na waweze kufuatilia kindani, ndio hawa ndugu zetu waache kuwa na hii shida Bwana Spika, waweze kupewa fidia Bwana Spika, na waweze kuishi maisha wanayopaswa kuishi. Bwana Spika, ukitembea sehemu zingine hapa Kenya, tuko na mashamba yetu, lakini hatuwezi tukaishi Bwana Spika kwa sababu ya kutokuwa na usalama Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo jambo la mashamba Bwana Spika limekwenda na sugu. Ukitembea mahali kunaitwa Kimanjo, Ilipolee, uende Dodor, hiyo ndio shida Bwana Spika. Watu wanapigwa, wanaondolewa. Na jambo kubwa, watu wanapofanya hiyo Bwana Spika, wanataka kujinyakulia mashamba. Kama vile Mheshimiwa Cherargei alivyosema Bwana Spika, ati wewe ukiwa Mwafrika huwezi ukaitwa mwanaume kama huna shamba Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo unapata wengine wanatumia nguvu walizonazo kuwagandamiza wengine Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo kamati ambayo itashughulikia jambo hili, kamati ya mashamba na mazingira, iangalie kwa kindani na walete suluhu la kudumu Bwana Spika. Nashukuru kwa kunipa muda huu.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 237, 238.1, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources. And in terms of Standing Order 238.2, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading this prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. It is so directed. I thank you. Next order, Clerk.
Order number 5, papers.
The Majority Leader.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, 23rd May 2023. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Iten Municipality for the year ended 30th June 2020. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Iten Municipality for the year ended 30th June 2021. Reports of the Auditor General for the year ended 30th June 2022 on the financial statement of 1. Iten Municipality, the Makwiny County Sand Conservation and Utilization Authority, the Matungulu Kangundo Water and Sewerage Company Limited, the Municipality of Malindi, the Mombasa County Alcoholic Drinks Control Fund, the County Executive of Mombasa, the County Assembly of Mombasa, the Kirandich Water Company Limited, the Nakuru Rural Water and Sanitation Company Limited, the Nakuru Water and Sanitation Service Company Limited, the Nawasol Company Limited, the Elder Ravine Water and Sewerage Company, the Central Rift Valley Water Works Development Agency, the Receiver of Revenue, County Government of Homa Bay, the County Executive of Homa Bay, the County Assembly of Homa Bay, the County Government of Meru, Receiver of Revenue, the Meru County Investment and Development Corporation, the Meru Youth Service Board, the Meru County Assembly Members Car Loan and Housing Schemes Fund, the Meru Water and Sewerage Service Registered Trustees, the County Assembly of Meru Staff Car Loan and Housing Schemes Fund, and Kisii County Bursaries Fund. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay.
Next order, Clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Senator Catherine Muma. That notice is deferred. Next order, clerk.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Statement pursuant to Standing Order 53-1, the Honorable Senator Richard Onyonka. That statement is dropped. Senator Richard Onyonka had 2 statements, and those statements are dropped. Senator Raphael Chimera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 2 statements as well. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources regarding compensation of residents displaced for purposes of expansion of Ukunda airstrip. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, state why the National Land Commission has not compensated residents of Mkwakwani village in Ukunda, Kwale County, whose land was acquired by government for the purposes of expansion of Ukunda airstrip by the Kenya Airports Authority. And secondly, spell out measures, if any, put in place by the National Land Commission and the Kenya Airports Authority to ensure timely compensation of the residents of Mkwakwani, stating the timelines for compensation. Second statement, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding the complete ban on night discos during funerals, commonly known as Disco Matanga, in Kwale County. In the statement, the committee should, number 1, state the reasons for the complete ban of Disco Matanga by government in Kwale County without a proper working framework. Number 2, clarify the legal basis for the complete banning of Disco Matanga in Kwale County since January 2022. Number 3, direct the Ministry of Interior and National Administration to develop a practical framework to regulate Disco Matangas without the associated risks. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, state measures, if any, by the government to ensure that the ban is lifted with immediate effect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Munyahaji Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, nimesimama kuunga mkono maombi ya taarifa ya Senator Chimera kuhusiana na taarifa ya kwanza, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwamba hili swala la wakazi wa Ukunda ambao ardhi zao zilichukuliwa kwa sababu ya ujenzi wa upanuzi wa uwanja wa ndege wa Ukunda ni swala ambalo limekuwa donda sugu, Mheshimiwa Spika. Nakumbuka tulizuru mahali hapa mnamo mwaka 2018 tukiwa na kamati ya fedha ikiongozwa na Senator Kajwang, Mheshimiwa Spika, na wahusika pia walikuja katika bunge hili la Senate kuja kueleza masaibu yanayowapata kwa ucheleshaji wa kulipwa kwa zile ardhi ambazo zimechukuliwa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo ni jambo ambalo, Mheshimiwa Spika, limekuwa donda sugu, na naona juzi kiongozi wa serikali alisema kwamba National Land Commission wasijihusishe na mambo ya kutathmini ardhi ambazo zinachukuliwa kwa miradi ya serikali. Mheshimiwa Spika, swala hilo ni swala la kwamba tunapita mipaka ya sheria, kwa sababu sheria inasema kwamba masuala ya kutathmini, yani evaluation, ni swala ambalo litafanywa na National Land Commission. Kwa hivyo ikiwa sasa rais wa nchi atasema kwamba ameikataza National Land Commission wakati sheria inaruhusu National Land Commission ifanye kazi hiyo, ina maana kwamba anaingilia kazi za tume huru katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nasema kwamba tunaomba National Land Commission iharakishe ulipaji wa watu hawa na sehemu yote nyingine ambao ardhi zimechukuliwa na watu hawajalipwa walipwe kwa haraka. Lakini tunapinga vikali kauli ya rais kusema kwamba National Land Commission hawataweza tena kutathmini ardhi ambazo zinachukuliwa kwa miradi ya serikali. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii.
Senator Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also arise to support the statement by our colleague. Mr. Speaker, the compensation by government has been a big challenge in this country. In this particular case, you talk about compensation of those whose land was taken because of the Ukunda airstrip. But Mr. Speaker, you also is aware that there has been compulsory acquisition of pieces of land by Kenha, by Kera, and other institutions of government to build roads, the express highway, the SGR. And Mr. Speaker, there are very many Kenyans. Today, Mr. Speaker, I'm told when you go to Land Commission, National Land Commission, the unpaid compensation is in billions. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans suffer because this is their resource. And sometimes they even plan to utilize the money that are supposed to be compensated from the government. And they indeed suffer, Mr. Speaker, because there is no clear provision of law as to the timelines within which compensation should be actually done by the government. Mr. Speaker, when you acquire land through compulsory acquisition, Mr. Speaker, it means you will have done the budget for compensation for the purpose. I sometimes, Mr. Speaker, wonder where the money goes, because at the point of acquiring the land, the money is available for compensation. But thereafter, after some time, the money disappears and Kenyans suffer. Mr. Speaker, those of us who have a chance of sometimes representing clients in our institutions like the law firms and so on, Mr. Speaker, we come across these issues. It is true that Kenyans are suffering. Mr. Speaker, even the dams we have today in many parts of the country, billions is applied, and yet the owners of the land on which these dams are built are not compensated. Mr. Speaker, I think this House should rise to the occasion. I think we should come up with clear laws that once government has acquired land through compulsory acquisition, then within a specified period of time, those people should be compensated so that we don't leave it open for the government to pay as and when, Mr. Speaker, they wish to, because Kenyans are suffering. So, Mr. Speaker, I really support this, and I think it is an issue that should be able to apply across the country. I want to appeal, and Mr. Speaker, I am a member of this committee, and I think when the issue will come to the committee responsible, we are going to also take up the issue and perhaps expand it to cover other areas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Beatrice Akinyi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to support the statement by Senator Raphael about the compensation of residents displaced by the expansion of Ukunda airstrip. Mr. Speaker, the issue of compensation, as my colleagues have stated, is a thorny in this country. Mr. Speaker, when the National Land Commission, Kenyans aired their views that there should be a commission that would deal with such issues, Kenyans expected that that would be dealt with and such challenges would be a thing of the past. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a pity that Kenyans continue to suffer even when there are reasons to compensate them. And, Honorable Speaker, in the compensation of the members in Ukunda airstrip, the compensation is not only limited to land. Over the time, when people are settled on land, they have a number of properties that they have invested in. Honorable Speaker, they have houses they build on the land. There are a number of items that are categorized as properties. And Honorable Speaker, I say this because there is a very big problem in Isiolo County for lack of compensation on what we call along the Horn of African Gateway project in Isiolo. That, Honorable Speaker, Kenha had engaged NLC to compensate the affected properties. But here is a case where the National Land Commission chooses to only compensate land of the people in Isiolo and leave their houses. And Honorable Speaker, this is a pure act of indignifying the people of Isiolo. So, Honorable Speaker, coming back to the statement by Raphael Shemera, I want to support that the valuation must be done accordingly on the people that are affected by the expansion of Ukunda airstrip. The land that is going to be used for the expansion must be valued properly at the market rates. The property on this land must be valued, and property, Honorable Speaker, as I've said, is not only limited to the houses. Honorable Speaker, in Isiolo, we have a very funny case where a house is destroyed, half of it is compensated, and a half of it is left uncompensated. And there arises the question of inequality. So, Honorable Speaker, this situation is not only limited to the Ukunda airstrip. In Homa Bay, where I come from, there is an airstrip called Kabunde airstrip that is used in the region. Honorable Speaker, it has been over 10 years as we chase compensation by the Kenya Airports Authority for the Kabunde airstrip to be expanded for the use of the region. A number of us and a number of people in that region have to fly to Kisumu and connect to Homa Bay as far as Migori and to Tanzania, where we have a functional airstrip, although the runway is smaller and needs expansion. So, Honorable Speaker, the National Land Commission must come out to make proper the compensation of Ukunda airstrip so that the people may get what belongs to them. I support.
Senator Githuku.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, nimesimama kuunga mkono statement ya Mheshimiwa Chimera kuhusu watu wa Ukunda kwanza waweze kulipwa ridhaa. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kuunga mkono kwamba wakati wote ambapo kutakuwa na miradi ambayo inachukuliwa na ama serikali inataka kufanya miradi sehemu ambayo imekaliwa na wananchi, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni haki ya wananchi kuweza kulipwa fidia na serikali. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka tu niseme kwamba kuna sehemu nyingi tofauti katika Jamhuri yetu ya Kenya ambazo zimekuwa wananchi wamekuwa affected na miradi ya serikali. Nikisimama hapa Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kuongelea kuhusu watu wangu wa kaunti ya Lamu ambapo Mheshimiwa Spika, pale mahali Lapset imekalia, Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna wananchi wangu pale ambao wameathirika sana. Serikali haijawahi kuwalipa ridhaa, na nataka Mheshimiwa Spika kuungana na wenzangu kwamba hiyo ni mradi ambao ni wa serikali ambao utafaidi serikali ya Kenya, na haitakuwa mzuri Mheshimiwa Spika watu wadogo ama watu wachache kama wale watu wangu wa Lamu Mheshimiwa Spika waweze kuumia. Ndiposa Mheshimiwa Spika nasema kwamba kuna barabara ambayo imekatwa kutoka Lapset mahali imekalia kuelekea mpaka ile ambayo inaenda mpaka Southern Sudan ikipitia Isiolo. Mheshimiwa Spika, National Land Commission ilienda ika-identify wale watu ambao walikuwa wamekalia ile sehemu na wakasema kwamba wamequalify kuweza kulipwa, na tangia siku hiyo ambapo walichukua hiyo maoni na kuweza ku-identify wale watu ambao ni affected, Mheshimiwa Spika, hawajawahi kulipwa. Nataka niungane na wenzangu niseme kwamba wale watu pia wanafaa kuingizwa katika listi ya kuweza kulipwa ridhaa na fidia ili waweze kujinufaisha na maisha yao yaweze kuendelea na waendelee kujivunia kuwa wa Kenya. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono.
Senator Karungo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the statements, but more so on the issue of the disco matanga, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the objects of devolution is for counties to manage their own affairs. And that includes their cultures, the way of doing things, religion, and anything that concerns the society, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would urge the committee that is going to deal with this issue to look into that matter with that consideration in their mind, Mr. Speaker. But we also need to ask ourselves, why were they banned? In 2018, the same ban was effected in Kilifi County of disco matangas. In 2019, there was another ban of that kind in Homa Bay, and now this one in Kwale, I think in 2022, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the authority or when the Interior Department was banning these disco matangas, they cited unexpected pregnancies among the school-going children, because in these events there's discos, there's drinking, there's dancing, and it happens all the way to the morning from night, Mr. Speaker. And they give some reasons that it was affecting the 100% transition of students from primary school to secondary school because of unwanted pregnancies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the Senator, as Senator Chimera said, instead of banning 100%, it should be somehow regulated. Because if that's how they feel when sending the departed one, that's how they feel is the best way to celebrate, Mr. Speaker, I don't think it should be 100% ban. I think they should be controlled in a way, maybe hours, maybe time, and maybe those in attendance or those to attend such disco matangas. Maybe where I come from, Mr. Speaker, we might not have this, but I feel it is my mandate and the mandate of this Senate to defend other people's rights. I remember somebody was telling me that they even have competitions. Who had the biggest disco matanga in a certain area when they're sending, they're paying the last respects to their departed one, Mr. Speaker. So I believe instead of banning them, let the security be enhanced. Instead of banning them, let the authority or the government come up with measures to help that they make sure they reduce these engagements that make the children, these unwanted pregnancies. Even the parents themselves can just take care of their children. You don't have to let them attend such events. So, Mr. Speaker, I support that statement, and I believe the committee will come with the right recommendations. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Hamida Kibwana.
My statement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to... Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget regarding withholding value-added tax, VAT, obligations on petroleum products and its impact on businesses. In the statement, the committee should state the rationale for the current withholding VAT obligation on petroleum products, stating its impact on the profitability and sustainability of businesses in the petroleum sector. Number two, provide an analysis of the impact of the 2% withholding VAT on the petroleum industry, particularly in terms of job losses and negative effects on the economy, stating how changes made by the Finance Act 2021 to the Tax Procedures Act 2015 affected the petroleum industry's ability to seek exemptions from withholding VAT obligations. Number three, table evidence that supports the claim that removing the withholding VAT obligation on petroleum products will result in increased revenue from pay-as-you-earn, pay, corporate tax, and other revenues generated for county governments, stating alternative measures that could be considered to ease the financial burden on petroleum businesses. And number four, state interventions put in place to ensure that the Finance Bill 2023 includes an amendment to exempt petroleum products from withholding VAT obligations, stating potential drawbacks, if any, and how this can be addressed. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chiranke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have seen my sister, Senator Amida, has raised an issue of VAT. She is prophesizing because the Finance Bill 2023 is looking to increase VAT on fuel products from 8% to 15%. Mr. Speaker, as we talk today, the country is not doing very well economically, and there are two issues. Either we tax or we borrow. The budget ceiling, Mr. Speaker, as we talk, is around 9.4 trillion Kenya shillings. And the ceiling that this House, and then I voted during the handshake arrangement against, was 10 trillion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. We are looking at a budget of 3.6 trillion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. Our public debt is no longer sustainable. Therefore, the fact that 8% has been increased to 15% on VAT, Mr. Speaker, is very critical in the growth of the economy. We either choose to go to countries like Canada, Ethiopia, Ghana, Ethiopia, and other countries who have default in terms of payment, in terms of public debt that we have internationally, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of fuel subsidy. Who are these people? Mr. Speaker, as we talk today, there are many companies who are well connected that benefited from fuel subsidy. Mr. Speaker, who are the beneficiaries? Mr. Speaker, when you look, and I remember we censured as CS of Energy in the last session because of misuse and abuse of fuel subsidy, and then, Mr. Speaker, because what you are having is specific petrol stations who are selling fuel like a happy hour, Mr. Speaker, for people who add things more than water, and they were not in a position to tell us who are these, Mr. Speaker. As we talk today, there are many companies that want to be paid because they gave fuel subsidy, Mr. Speaker. That process was abused. Mr. Speaker, any sane economic person, the fuel and unga subsidy should be removed because it was not sustainable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it behooves all of us, Mr. Speaker, that we cannot survive on subsidy, Mr. Speaker. Look, for example, we better subsidize production over consumption. Because if we are talking about food security, for example, we better give farmers in Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, subsidized fertilizer to produce more of ndizi to be consumed in Nairobi, as opposed as giving unga that is subsidized, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this statement by Senator Amida, with all due respect, of course the committee will dispense with, but in my own opinion, fuel subsidy was abused, Mr. Speaker. The international economists, the IMF, everybody has said you cannot live on subsidy. It is like living on Fulisa. You cannot live on Fulisa, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when the finance bill, I would have wished to listen to the comments of Senator Amida when the finance bill will come before the floor of the House, because we need to raise our local revenue. We don't raise, we borrow more. We borrow more, the country, Mr. Speaker, will be sold reja like mitumba in some markets, Mr. Speaker. And we don't want, Mr. Speaker, to come here buying a loaf of bread, come with like 10 kilos of 100 shillings, Mr. Speaker, because our currency has been devalued, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I think on a point of information, Mr. Speaker, Senator Amida is doing very well in many things, but I think on this one, I beg to disagree, because fuel subsidy has been abused, and the government under President William Ruto has done very well to remove any form of subsidy and cut down even on this budget, Mr. Speaker. I have seen, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, there are many, and I hate to reply these things, Mr. Speaker, because I have seen our colleagues from the other aisle in Disco Matangas. I'm told this Disco Matanga, my younger brother, Senator Rafael Chimera, was there describing how Disco Matangas happens is in a better place, or birthday parties or baby showers. Mr. Speaker, we need to be honest to the country in conclusion. There is a misnomer that counties, their money was slashed, Mr. Speaker. In the financial year 2021-2022, for new members, we fought here. I remember Senator Faki was here, Senator Okongo Mugeni was here. We fought and gave counties 370 billion. We have fought an increment of 15.3 billion addition, that is 385 billion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, counties will get conditional grants of 44 billion. Counties will get 429 billion in both equitable shareable revenue and in conditional grants, Mr. Speaker. So I want to ask our colleagues, I know as politicians, when you see microphone and media, you decide to be excited, Mr. Speaker, simply because you want to please your crowd. But let us be honest, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Senator Faki?
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Honorable Senator for Nandi is misleading the House in saying that the counties are going to get 425 billion. 425 billion in conditional grants, Mr. Speaker. What the DORA said, Mr. Speaker, is that the counties are going to share 385 billion, 425 million Kenya shillings. There was nothing like 425 billion in that DORA, which was passed by this House and assented by the President, I think 3 weeks ago. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cherangei.
Mr. Speaker,
are you misleading?
No, I'm not misleading, Mr.
Figures
Speaker.
Factual?
It is as factual, Mr. Speaker, it is as factual as the second coming of Jesus Christ. Mr. Speaker, it is very important. And you know, Mr. Speaker, when we are in this forum, we learn. And I request we learn. I learn from colleagues, they learn from me. I said very well that the President, we ascended 385.3 billion under equitable shareable revenue. Under conditional grants, and with the law we passed here, Mr. Speaker, we passed 44 billion. It comes to 429 billion. Mr. Speaker, it is like having money in equity and KCB, it is your money. So I think Senator Faki, Mr. Speaker, should stop consulting Sergeant at Arms and listen keenly, Mr. Speaker, because I am making a life-changing statement so that they don't mislead the public in these Komatangas, Mr. Speaker. It is 429.5 billion, Mr. Speaker, that is going to counties. And I want to beg our colleagues, the answer will bear as witness. We can say other things for political expediency, but facts will remain as stubborn as it is, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to raise there and hope when this issue of VAT will come up, Mr. Speaker, I will want to also sit because you remember, Mr. Speaker, I asked a question about fuel subsidy. Mr. Speaker, you saw Daily Nation yesterday. 62 billion was lost. And among of it is under fuel subsidy. And the person who was making a lot of noise yesterday in Congress Course was the person who presided the loss of 62 billion. So since some of the side that are asking about VAT, they should be asking Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga where 62 billion that was meant on fuel subsidies, Mr. Speaker. We cannot lie to this country. I think the era of lies, Mr. Speaker, must stop because 62 billion, Mr. Speaker, cannot be accounted, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I support, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order, Senator Eddie?
Mr. Speaker, is Senator Cherangei in order to, I'm rising under Standing Order number 115. Is Cherangei, Senator, Honorable Member of Nandi, in order to verbatim call individuals' names as high as Honorable Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta in this House without a substantive motion, Mr. Speaker? Is he in order? You are discussing other people.
Mr. Speaker, Standing Order 155 is something else. Mr. Speaker, when you see Standing Order 115 talks about senators' bags. So I don't know whether he has seen Senator Amida's bag anywhere or my sister
Senator Cherangei, just yes. Have your seat. Have your seat. Senator Eddie, have
Chair.
your seat. Have your seat, please. Just take your seat. You have made your point. You've made your point under Standing Order 115, which is not applicable under this instance, and therefore I proceed to overrule. Senator Omogeni, proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this statement that was raised by Senator Amida. But, Mr. Speaker, we should also not allow Senator Cherargei to mislead the House. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the money that was voted by this House to go to the counties is 385 billion as a shareable revenue, Mr. Speaker. The issue of conditional grant
Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, this is one of those petitions that makes me wonder what it is that we do in this country. You take teachers, you say, let us educate them, let us put them through a training, you increase their salaries. 27 years after, they are still crying that those increment they are yet to receive. What exactly are we doing, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, this is an issue which, when you read the petition, you wonder whether we represent the people we say we represent. My views are a little bit unorthodox when it comes to issues to do with personal welfare. Why is it that we ourselves here as leaders, whenever we are promised, there will be trickle effect on the common mwananchi, the so-called hustler? It is sad, Mr. Speaker, that we are abandoning hustlers hardly before our first anniversary in office as UDA administration. And, Mr. Speaker, issues of taxation is not something to joke with. Poor taxation measures has brought down governments. Poor taxation measures has brought down governments. Mr. Speaker, we must be conscious about the poor, the people who vote for us. I don't mind, Mr. Speaker, increase of taxation to 35%. In fact, I wish the 3% property tax, the one you want to take away from teachers, can be lumped on MPs so that you pay 38%, so that we can think when we are passing laws touching on taxation. But, Mr. Speaker, to bring a law that is going to increase fuel on border, he's being insensitive, Mr. Speaker. And as people who have been elected to speak on
What
behalf
is your
of our
point of
people,
order, Senator Cherargei?
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for Commissioner, my criminal lawyer defender, during my heydays in trenches fighting for democracy, is it in order, Mr. Speaker, to mislead the House on the House levy fund, yet the Housing Act was passed, Mr. Speaker? And on only 3%, it will be 2,500 matched by the employer, Mr. Speaker, and it is capped. Is it in order to listen more, Mr. Speaker, to WhatsApp gossip as opposed getting, Mr. Speaker, a substantive issue as the learned senior counsel, Mr. Speaker? And he's the only one in this session, Mr. Speaker. Is it in order to mislead, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, I wish Senator Cherargei can be a good student who listens. And you should be a debater who also reads. You should read the 156 pages of the finance bill, and you will see that there is a proposal therein to tax Kenyans 3% in the name of housing tax. It is there. So it's not a matter of gossip. Tax, Mr. Speaker. And I want to tell Senator Cherargei
What's the point of order, Cherarchy?
You know, you can't raise
Under
a
standing order number 105, Mr. Speaker, on the statement of fact, is it in order for the only learned senior counsel on the House, which will depend on this, to mislead all of us by saying 3% housing levy fund is a tax? Yet it is not, it is a saving, Mr. Speaker, that is paid, Madam Speaker, sorry, that is paid after 7 years, and he should be able, he has advised me to read finance bill, Mr. Speaker. I have read finance bill. In fact, I should be the one teaching him because, Madam Speaker, sorry, because the 3% we are talking about housing levy fund, Madam Speaker, is a saving. It is not a tax. Is it in order to mislead the House as per standing order number 105?
Senior counsel, do you want to respond?
Yes,
to that?
you know, Madam Speaker, lawyers are normally very poor with the figures. Whether you call it a levy, whether you call it a taxation, the thing is that you are raiding Kenyans' income and taking away 3%. Whether you call it housing levy, whatever you call it, it is still a taxation measure, Mr. Speaker. And I was in Nandi, Mr. Speaker. I want to tell Senator Cherargei to put his ear on the ground.
Madam
Listen
Speaker,
to the
Madam
teachers
Speaker,
in Nandi.
Senior counsel.
Madam Speaker, sorry. Madam Speaker, I want Senator Cherargei to put his ear on the ground and listen to the people of Nandi. Listen to the teachers of Nandi. Listen to the boda in Nandi. Listen to the hustler in Nandi. They will tell you they don't support these taxation measures, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Order, Senator Cherargei. He shall be heard in silence.
Madam Speaker, these taxation proposals are very unpopular with the Mwananchi. Madam Speaker, in 2009, the Labour government in Australia came up with such very poor taxation measures, and it cost them. And I want to caution the Wood administration. You're going to be very sensitive with the way you deal with the Kenyans, especially, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, sir, the people are in the low card of income, Mr. Speaker. When we pass any taxation, Mr. Speaker, sir, we must be conscious on how this is going to affect the common Mwananchi, Mr. Speaker. So I want to urge the committee to look at this matter carefully, Mr. Speaker. And if this is a matter that affects counties, I don't belong to the school of thought that says that Senate should never look on a finance bill, even when it has laws that concern counties. And in this particular finance bill, Mr. Speaker, there are so many laws that are hidden in there. The Employment Act is there. This thing you are calling housing levy is hidden there. All those are the things that concern counties, Mr. Speaker. And the only way we can reclaim the glory of this House, Mr. Speaker, is to demand, Mr. Speaker, that when we have laws...
Senator Mugen, would you wish to be informed?
Mr. Speaker, you know, Senator Cherargei has been on his feet twice. So on this particular occasion, I wish to disappoint him. I am not willing to be informed by Senator Cherargei. So, Mr. Speaker, let us as a House reflect on our mandate. And let us also, Mr. Speaker, look at the history of other Senate houses all over the world. You're going to fight for your space, Mr. Speaker. When the Senate of the US was put in place, they never used to consider taxation laws, but they fought and got that space with time. The same with the Senate in Australia. And Mr. Speaker, we are a unique house because we enjoy direct mandate from the people. Senator Cherargei was elected by the people of Nandi, direct, Mr. Speaker. It's not like the House of Lords in UK, where you get an appointment out of recognition of the contribution you have made to your country. As, Mr. Speaker, we have been elected directly by the people. How then, Mr. Speaker, can we be sitting here as a house that prides itself as being the upper house without seizing an opportunity like the one that is before us? And we demand that the finance bill comes before the Senate and we deal with it in a just manner, Mr. Speaker. Because we don't want our people, Mr. Speaker, to be at the mercy of the other house, Mr. Speaker. This is the upper house. We are few. We can debate on issues in a bipartisan manner and make a vote in a manner that does not subject our people to untold suffering. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this statement, and I hope the committee that will be tasked with this work will do justice to it, and we should get this report before the finance bill is debated by the other house. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Next order, clerk. Before we move to the next order, clerk, we had deferred order 6. We will take that before we proceed to order 8. So kindly call order 6, please, on the order paper.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Senator Catherine Mumu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for granting me this opportunity to table this notice of motion on the regulation of electronic cigarettes in Kenya. The motion is that aware that Section 68(1)(b) of the Health Act 2017 provides for interventions by the national government to reduce the use of tobacco and other addictive substances and to counter exposure of children and others to tobacco smoke, and Section 32 of the Tobacco Control Act 2007 provides for the right of every person to a smoke-free environment, including the protection from exposure to secondhand smoke, concerned that while the Tobacco Control Act defines key terms and covers topics including but not limited to restrictions on public smoking, tobacco advertising, promotion and sponsorship and packaging and labeling of tobacco products, Section 2 of this Act does not contemplate non-tobacco products and therefore lacks restrictions on the use, advertising, promotion, and sponsorship or packaging and labeling of synthetic nicotine in the form of e-cigarettes, resulting in the increase in popularity and consumption of e-cigarettes among youth, including minor children. Now, therefore, the Senate resolves that the Ministry of Health should urgently convene an all-inclusive stakeholder forum to, 1, develop a national policy regulating e-cigarettes and all related elements, including vape pens, e-liquids, flavors, and their marketing and advertising in mainstream media as well as social media, and 2, to establish rules to govern the products, sale, advertising, and consumption of synthetic nicotine and control the illicit trade of counterfeit products relating to this trade. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 10, the prompt payment bill, Senate Bills number 8 of 2022, second reading, resumption of debate interrupted on Wednesday, 12th April, 2023.
I thought you had to call order 8, clerk. So that I know that the committee had requested for deferral, but for the purpose of the record, I thought you'll call out, we defer it, and then we proceed in that manner.
Order number 8, the county allocation of revenue bill, Senate Bills number 16 of 2023, second reading.
Yeah, the committee had requested for deferral of that bill, and therefore it stands deferred. Proceed to the next order, please.
Order number 9, Committee of the Whole on the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2023.
Again, the committee had requested that this particular order be deferred to tomorrow. So it is so deferred. Next order.
Order number 10, the prompt payment bill, Senate Bills number 8 of 2022, second reading, resumption of debate interrupted on Wednesday, 12th April, 2023.
The Honorable Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a very straightforward bill from the onset, the prompt payment bill. Mr. Speaker, I've sat for some time. I noticed the change on the seat. Madam Speaker, I've sat for some time at the Public Accounts Committee. One of the, and in fact the National Treasury, even went ahead on even invoking Article 225, Madam Speaker, because of a lot of pending bill. If my memory serves me right, Madam Speaker, there are almost over 120 billion Kenyan shillings in terms of pending bill in counties. I think national government, one entity, I think roads has close to 1 trillion in terms of pending bills in roads only ministry, Madam Speaker. This issue of pending bill is hitting our people, Madam Speaker. Our contractors in our villages, our counties, be it the ones who did ECD, the ones who have done polytechnics, the ones who have done anything with county, Madam Speaker, in terms of service and goods, Madam Speaker, are suffering. Some of them have been auctioned, Madam Speaker. These contractors in the village, Madam Speaker, are treating ailments that came because of not being paid, Madam Speaker. Some of them are treating pressure, diabetic, Madam Speaker. You saw even a video doing rounds in social media, Madam Speaker, where an old man had removed his clothes in protest because he has not been paid, Madam Speaker. Devolution has brought misery. I'm sorry to say this, Madam Speaker, and pain, and anguish, and gnashing of teeth, Madam Speaker, by many Kenyans who are contractors in our counties. Madam Speaker, for example, in Nandi County, we have close to 1 billion, Madam Speaker, that is on pending bill alone. 1 billion, Madam Speaker, all contractors in Nandi are suffering. And having sat in the Public Accounts Committee, discuss, Madam Speaker. And most of, Madam Speaker, the sad reality is these are young people, Madam Speaker. These are people who took an LSO, an LPO to get financing from a bank, from credit society, Madam Speaker, to finance some of these projects, Madam Speaker. And they are young people, they are women, they are people living with disability, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, can you believe there are people who are still being owed by counties from the onset of devolution in 2013-2014? Madam Speaker, the National Treasury at some point tried to do special audit on pending bills and even went ahead and threatened counties that if they don't pay the pending bills, they will invoke Article 225 in terms of suspension of funds, Madam Speaker. It is sad. This prompt payment bill, Madam Speaker, because I was building the background, I want to thank Senator Omar, one of my members of public accounts and also a renowned accountant, well-established finance expert, for coming in with this bill as timely. This prompt payment bill. And I think this, and I want to encourage Senator Omar, Madam Speaker, this is one of the things that you will leave an indelible mark in the legislative process and in the history of Parliament of the Republic of Kenya among the Commonwealth countries, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue where one issue, there is no written contract for the 90 days, I think that is realistic, Madam Speaker, where the payment, when you supply your things, maybe a company is pre-qualified. Let's assume during COVID era, you supply pharmaceuticals, and there is no written contract. This law has provided that within 90 days, there must be payment upon, of course, the process of completion of works. If it is supply, of course, invoice, among other things, Madam Speaker. And of course, in line with Public Procurement and Disposal Act, the Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, of course, among other procurement, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is this public procurement, and I think this one PPOA, something that looks into dispute when there is the issue. We have a lot of complaints, Madam Speaker, where award of tender is involved in a lot of recurs. And therefore, they must follow the law in terms of procurement process. Madam Speaker, we have argued this, that why would counties and national government, for example, procure without having the money? Where is the procurement plan? Madam Speaker, in what we call IFIMIS, Information Financial and Management Information System, I think we need to amend the PMF Act, Madam Speaker, and look at the regulations. Because why would I give you supply to supply water to this chamber if I don't have the cash? Why don't we wire it in such a way, and there was a proposal by government then, that you must display the people you have awarded contracts, Madam Speaker. Why don't we tell counties and come up with a law both nationally and at county level, you cannot spend what you do not have? I think, Madam Speaker, you are a senior learned colleague in this profession, and you are aware that you cannot sell what you do not have. For example, there is a principle, Madam Speaker. And therefore, we must bite the bullet and agree that in your procurement plan, in the FMEs, you can only spend when you have money. So if there is a disbursement, I'm aware counties, Madam Speaker, are being owed almost 90 billion in terms of disbursement. And I've seen the equalization fund disbursement, I don't know, county allocation disbursement, Madam Speaker. There is an aspect where 90 billion. For example, when counties receive 90 billion, I don't find it a problem, Madam Speaker. Then they can now implement their procurement plan. Because one of the shocking things is, one of the audit queries is late exchequer releases. Because now the problem, we are heading to the financial year, Madam Speaker, this financial year, the Treasury opens FMEs up to midnight. I don't know why. I've never understood why Treasury behaves like night runners. My neighbors, night runner is not a bad thing, but I don't know why they operate like night runners in terms of opening and I can see Senator from Mutembei smiling excitedly when I mentioned the night runners. Or young people call it usiku sako, Madam Speaker. People who have become more active at night. So I don't know why the FMEs is open up to the last day. Then you expect counties to spend, and that is how corruption is. Madam Speaker, you remember the former ambassador said that corruption is budgeted in Kenya. And at that time, he put a figure of 700 billion, Madam Speaker. So we must look. Madam Speaker, when you come to Treasury, there is no money. There is service. There is a pending bill. Where is this money? You go to a county, you get statutory deduction, but no remission. Where is the money? It is corruption, Madam Speaker. And I want at this point to thank our leader, the national leader, His Excellency Dr. William RUTO, Madam Speaker, because he has decided to fight corruption heads on. For example, the cleanup that happened in Kemsa, and I know when cleanup is happening in Kemsa, Madam Speaker, it will assist in ensuring that we get timely disbursement of drugs to our, Madam Speaker. We need cleanup. And therefore, I want to commend the President and ask governors, Madam Speaker, and I would have expected also Senator Ochieng, Senator Eddie Kisheru, to have commended and lauded the President for the efforts of fighting corruption. Because at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, we need to be honest and truthful men. When something good is done, you say it. When something not properly said, you do oversight and you question, Madam Speaker. So these, of course, the goods, private entities, and I think it cuts across both counties and what have you. And then, Madam Speaker, procureur shall pay to supply for delivery of goods works on the due date. And I think, Madam Speaker, that will assist because we are looking about 120 billion. Of course, the supplier is put in position by the supplier, Madam Speaker, because I'm running through to allow colleagues also, Madam Speaker. I think on the issue of interest, I don't know, Madam Speaker, in 2013, 2014, somebody who constructed a cattle dip in Nandi at BQ was 500,000. I don't know whether it makes economic sense to pay that person in 2023 500,000 shillings only. We must make it painful so that people who make decision of procuring don't do it haphazardly for convenience or getting kickbacks. We must put interest rate. Madam Speaker, and the Chair of Education, when you just walked in, Madam Speaker, and then we were having about the petition of teachers. I want to inform the House that those teachers have been paid. I think the process of paying them around, I think 16 billion. I think around 2,500 teachers that had moved to Nakuru High Court in 2008, they have been paid. But does it make sense to pay that teacher of 27,000 shillings now? So the issue of interest and fairness in terms, Madam Speaker, of ensuring that we lamp on the interest. And therefore, I want to laud Senator Omar. He has talked about the interest, all contractual and legal obligations. So if, Madam Speaker, I am supposed to be paid in Siaya County, I'm not saying I should be paid for any service in Siaya County where my brother, the youthful Senator Oburu Odinga, for example, I'm being owed by my former colleague and my good friend Senator Orengo. And the law says so long as legal contractual obligations have been made. So if, Madam Speaker, I was to be paid by first and you end up paying me at 50, we should charge an interest so that governors take these things seriously. Madam Speaker. Finally, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, look at, of course, which is a clause 9, a person wishes to enter into a contract for supply of goods or with national account shall make to the accounting on pending or to them to a small or micro enterprise. And this is where bottom up. You know, we say during campaign, Madam Speaker, we start down, going up. And that is the intention. And that is why when you see Asla Fund, Madam Speaker, we are trying to tailor-make. Madam Speaker, I heard my colleague saying this. In conclusion, because I just wanted to give a snap, these are straightforward. People are saying we are introducing new taxes in the finance bill. We want to Asla's. Madam Speaker, we must get those taxes. To get those taxes, because I highly doubt if there is somebody who wants 500,000 who is a hustler. If we are requesting only 3%, or even a turnover we have introduced to improve the capital base, Madam Speaker, of 3%, that's 15,000 Kenya shillings. Madam Speaker, what I am saying, we need money to go and give service to that person in the village, Mama Mboga and Boda. I've had people saying here, with all due respect to my senior counsel, saying the people in Nandi, I can confirm to this House, the people in Nandi are supporting the finance bill as is. Because what? We want resources, the taxes. You know, I have attended functions when I'm saying, and I don't know whether our colleagues get similar, even yourself. Mwananchi will stand and say, Senator, we need a road, we need an hospital, we need drugs, we need water. But where is the money that will do that job? It rules on taxation. So we need, Madam Speaker, to be honest with ourselves and have an honest conversation that for country to move forward, one is pay tax, but ensure that tax works for the people. The president has said as much, that even if he's given 1 shilling, he should protect that 1 shilling to ensure it gives value for your money. And I'm in the same page, Madam Speaker. Number 2, Madam Speaker, I said here, and I receive a lot of point of orders. There was 62 billion in terms of, Madam Speaker, as we talk today. Can I shock you? Almost 1 trillion was given through tax exemptions, tax abandonments, tax evasions. By the previous government, I don't want to say who, because if I say it will run me into problems. If that 1 trillion on tax evasion, tax exemptions was not given, for example, Madam Speaker, a leading bank, and I don't want to say my relationship with that bank, was given a tax exemption of 300 million. So what we should be doing, we should be ensuring we don't give anybody, even a tax exemption. We ensure we collect tax, because President Kibaki, And I don't know whether Senator Eddie Kisher, who is my good friend, I had been born then. When President Kibaki took over in 2002, Madam Speaker, the tax was less than 300 billion. By the time he left office 10 years, because of just saying, kulipa ushuru ni kujitegemea, kulipa ushuru ni he raised up to almost 1 trillion plus. Because of only sealing tax loopholes, tax exemptions, Madam Speaker, not allowing fake things like illegal importation of sugar. You have seen the president and the government has cracked the whip, and people are now in court in the issue of caps, Madam Speaker. I was talking to a friend and he was telling me he took the sugar, and when he tried to cook, the tea turned into black, and it was supposed to be the normal tea. Madam Speaker, that is how we ensure accountability. For example, somebody somewhere failed. Madam Speaker, even the issue of edible oils. You remember towards the end of last year or mid last year, there was allegations that edible oils had been produced that was not meeting consumption standards. Could it be the reason we have increased cases of cancer, lifestyle diseases? But the bottom line I'm making and submissions I'm making, even as we do this, we must tell these contractors, be paid on time, but pay tax. Senators pay tax. Madam Speaker, as a senator, I don't have a problem of paying 2,500 men for the house levy fund, because it's a savings, not a tax. After 7 years, I can still get my money and do whatever I want, or give it to my daughter or son to continue proceeding, Madam Speaker. Because that is the honorable thing to do. Because, Madam Speaker, they say there are two things in life that you are sure, either death or payment of tax, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I want to appeal that when this is paid, in terms of taxation, we are pushing for this bill to be passed, Madam Speaker, as is. Let these people who are going to be beneficiaries to pay the tax, Madam Speaker, and ensure we keep our economy running. Madam Speaker, with those very, very remarks, allow me to still continue. Madam Speaker, and I heard today women being lauded, and I watched from my bedroom when you were donating under Kewapa, you went to Langata prisons. This one has shown the women senators not only deal with humanitarian issues, they deal with serious legislative matters only also. So they should be, that should be put on record, Madam Speaker, so that somebody who was listening to Senate thought women in these women senators are only dealing with only giving things to Langata and what have you, Madam Speaker, and paying fines. This one has proven that women can be the trailblazers, and I continue to be the biggest gender to ensure even gender parity, Madam Speaker. I'm looking forward where we'll have Senate is 50% representation in the House, both in the National Assembly and the Senate. And I want to ask women senators, I don't have a problem if you tag along me next time and make sure I stand in between all of you so that I feel the warmth and also the comfort and be part of the process of doing good for this community. Thank you, Senator Omar. We wish you well, and I hope this bill comes to fruition. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Cherarke. We can promise you to join us. I don't know about the warmth. Senator Chimero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute on this very fundamental bill. From the onset, allow me to first of all congratulate and commend Senator Mariam Sheikh Omar for such a wonderful piece of legislation. Also, allow me to pass my sincere apologies for missing out on your visit to Langata Women's Prison. But I'm sure, as my colleague Senator Cherarke has put forth, that was a very fantastic and amazing job. Keep it up to the women colleagues in this house. Madam Speaker, from the onset, before devolution came into place, it was difficult for any ordinary Kenyan to actually get a national government tender. But shockingly enough, payment was guaranteed, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when we got the new constitution, 2010, and we started rolling out devolution, Madam Speaker, it became very easy for a young man and woman from Kenya to get a tender and actually do that particular tender. But it became very, very difficult for that young man and woman to be paid. Madam Speaker, governors have gone rogue. They've gone so rogue to an extent that they cherry pick whom they want to pay. It is a situation whereby we have a case of governors playing politics with these tenders. A young man gets a tender, he approaches a lending institution, a microfinance, be it an individual in the name of Senator Eddy perhaps, since he has money from the server story, and he's unable to get payment in good time. He has loans to service. Fortunately or unfortunately, this young man gets auctioned. We have lost people. People have lost their lives because of going through depression and stress out of chasing for payments. Madam Speaker, the same issue of a delay in payments has been promoting corruption in county governments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you cannot be paid without having to part with some small money so that your payment is guaranteed. I want to really thank Senator Mariam for this particular bill, because now we have been able to cure that mischief. For the first time, I want to really appeal to our governors and all those counties and COG that now you have no reason to delay payment for our entrepreneurs, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, revolution came to spur development. Revolution came to create millionaires out of very many hustlers out there. And these hustlers depend on county government work. It was very difficult back in the day to get government contracts, to get a government service, because you had to know someone. All the money was centralized in Nairobi. But now it's a very sad situation where you have all the money in Migori, Kwale County, Mutembei County, and yet you can't secure payment unless you know someone. I also want to really thank my colleague, Senator Mariam, for introducing very punitive measures. More specifically, I think this should be Section 9, Section 10, whereby in case of a delay in that payment, that particular officer then is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 5 million shillings or imprisonment of a term not exceeding 5 years, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is a very, very good starting point. For the first time, we'll have our procuring officers in county governments being told to stick to the law. They must ensure that our people who have been validly been contracted, who have offered services, get value for their money, Madam Speaker. I don't want to say much. Much has been said by my colleague, Senator Cheragei, but I just want to underscore the importance of this bill, Madam Speaker, that for the first time, we are cushioning Kenyans from unnecessary delays, from unnecessary political gimmicks, such that when you didn't support this particular governor in office, you can't get your payments until you play and dance to their political rhythm, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me in a very special way to recognize a few counties that have been very outstanding in processing their payments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the county government of Kwale, it is a public knowledge. It's in the public domain that contractors in Kwale are paid in very good time. There are no issues with payments. And I want to believe those guys in Kwale County, led by our able Governor Fatuma Achani, perhaps so beyond, or rather so ahead of this bill. Now they have a legal framework to even do better. Because now if we were paying our suppliers on time and there was no legal framework around it, and now the bill has come before this house, then I can imagine what more can we do as a county government in Kwale. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I really commend Senator Mariam, and I wish to support this particular bill, and I hope and pray that it comes to fruition. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Ogola.
Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate Senator Mariam from the onset for this prompt payment bill. Madam Speaker, it is important that when people offer services, it is only important and ethical that they get their payment, and especially on time. Madam Speaker, if you look at the LPOs that are given to contractors and suppliers, Honorable Speaker, it is important to note that behind there are notes that state that works is only given when there are monies that the payments are available, of course, provided by the budgets in our government. But Honorable Speaker, Madam Speaker, sometimes it's unfortunate, like the speakers before me have stated, that whereas our counties were supposed to be development centers for everybody, it was supposed to give equitable growth to all. Growth to the youths, growth to the women by doing business in our counties as provided in the law. For example, Madam Speaker, it is very clear that 30% of works and supplies are supposed to be given to the youths and women to empower them so that we have an empowered society, a society that looks at their youths and a society that looks at the women. And Honorable Speaker, at the onset, all these cadres of groups were very excited that once we had a society that was thinking about everybody. But Honorable Speaker, once these works are done, we do not see the reasons why payments cannot be made in time. And Honorable Speaker, as the other speakers have said, most of our people in their growth levels, they get resources from the lending companies, from the banks, and banks expect payment. Honorable Speaker, it is an unfortunate situation that back at our counties, we've seen personalities that were thriving getting down sick, depressed, just because of the stress that have been caused by the lending companies that wants money from them. And yet, these are people who have worked for the governments. Honorable Speaker, as this prompt payment bill takes effect, it is also important that payments are done for works and supplies that are done. Honorable Speaker, I say this because there has been ghost works that have been paid in our counties. And why do I say this, Madam Speaker? We have what is called procurement by IFMIS and payments that are done. You find a situation where works have been done, the same works have been used and getting funds from the controller of budget. But Honorable Speaker, in some instances, when these monies have been released, the same is not paid out to our people. And that is why I am saying, Madam Speaker, that payments also must be done for works that are done and for supplies that have been given. Honorable Speaker, I have a very pathetic case in Mutembei County where I come from, where transformers were procured for the county. But Honorable Speaker, you have transformers that were taken to different locations, and these transformers are not active, Honorable Speaker. We have transformers that were procured. Whoever was given this work was paid for this work, but the people of this county are not benefiting from these transformers. And that is why I say, Madam Speaker, that these payments must also be done to works and supplies that have been actually carried out. Madam Speaker, I support this bill. Every Kenyan who does some work, every Kenyan who invests must get their payment back. Honorable Speaker, because it is an investment. And Honorable Speaker, a number of these are the businesses that take care of our people. They make supplies, they do these works because it is a business and because they use the proceeds also to take care of their families. And that is why we say it is unfair that our people would give services to governments, would do works to government, and then soon after, when they have done this work, payments are not done. And Honorable Speaker, we take note of the fact that these payments are done in a way that there is certificates that are raised. And once those certificates are raised, it is important that those certificates are honored according to the agreements that are made. So, Honorable Speaker, I support the prompt payment bill, And I hope once it is enacted, it will improve the lives of our people. It will improve the lives of our people in business. It will improve the lives of our people who have given services and who have done works to the government, both in the county governments and even in the national government. I support, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think this bill is actually a very important bill today. I know it was there in 12 Parliament, but it did not succeed. As you are aware, Madam Speaker, many Kenyans today have lost their money in investing with the government. There are many people who went to contract with the government as suppliers, contractors, and they have not received their money for the last 10 years or so. When the devolution started, many Kenyans have had hopes in doing business with the government because the money has been devolved. The money was available at the grassroots level. But unfortunately, what happened is actually unforgivable. Many people who did their contractual work with the counties did not get their paid. Many of them have lost. Their businesses actually have been closed. Today we have many people who have not even taken their children to school. They have dropped out due to lack of money. Some of them were millionaires actually. People who have about 50 million, 100 million today are rendered to be pauper. They are very poor people now. And even the children are not able to go to good schools. And this is a very unfortunate thing. And then, you know, the thing is, the money is committed, agreement is signed, contractual work is done, everything is signed, but no payment is done. That same money is not that money that somebody should have been waiting, because the money has already been appropriated. That if it's going to be a construction of a hospital, a laboratory, whatever, it's already there in the budget. If it's going to be a roads construction, the money is already there in the budget. But the most unfortunate thing is that same money does not find its way to the people who did their money, the work. The money is diverted or misappropriated. And the most unfortunate thing is that same money, the people who appropriate this money are not being prosecuted. They are not taken, they don't take liability for the work. The Auditor General goes there, writes a report, the matter goes to ESC, anti-corruption guys go there, they confirm. So some of them are just taken to the police or reported, nothing goes on. You can see high-powered people have caused this country a lot of suffering. And many countries have actually, they have done a deal with contracts. They have been taken to courts. They have been released without any judgment, without anything. They went free, and they went free with their money. Nobody pays back the money. And then this country actually today, as you're aware, billions and billions is actually outstanding and unpaid bills for those people. Like my county now, Wajir has a bendy bill of 5.5 billion shillings. And you know, the funny thing is, the money has already been budgeted for, and the money was there in the budget. So where did the money go? It has been diverted. It has been utilized for other purposes. It has been pocketed. But I think up to today, we don't have one single person who has been taken to court. Madam Speaker, I think this bill now, and I want to thank Madam Senator Mariam for bringing this timely bill. It gives us at least on a way to develop regulations. It gives us it makes an offense for anybody who makes a contractual work in the national government, in the county, that they must account for whatever they have signed for. I think that will now be able to save Kenyans. But however, we must be able to at least save the many Kenyans who are today suffering. And today, some of them have even died. Some of them have gone to depression. Others have gone crazy because of frustrations. Because somebody loses billions and millions, and they have invested with the government. The same government is not able to pay the money. And the money is already in the budget. It has been appropriated, but I don't know how they change it again. So these are criminal cases. So I think it's a high time that things must be taken serious, and this will help. The bill will help. The bill will save many Kenyans from the suffering they have undergone for the last 10 years. Madam Speaker, I think we need to be serious. If you do business with government, the government may pay the money in time. Because I think this country can only develop if we invest that money in the country. I know some of this money is taken out of the country. People invest in other places. Money is stolen and taken to other things like Dubai and all those places. So it's a very unfortunate situation. And with those few remarks, I beg to support the bill.
Senator Siengo.
Asante sana, Bi Speaker, kwa kunipa fursa hii ya kuchangia mswada ambao umeletwa na Senator Mariam, ambaye namshukuru sana kwa kuona mbali na hakika kushughulikia swala ambalo linajenga serikali za ugatuzi hata na serikali kuu. Maana, Bi Speaker, hakika tukiangalia madhara ambayo inatokana na kucheleweshwa kwa malipo kwa wale wanaofanya kazi, wafanyabiashara wadogo wadogo, wale wamekomaa, hakika kuna shida kubwa sana. Ningeomba kama hii mswada itakuwa sheria, itakuwa muhimu sana kuhakikisha kwamba watu wanaofanya kazi wanalipwa kwa wakati unaofaa na wakati unaostahili. Wengi kama vile wenzangu wamesema, ni kweli kwamba wanaomba fedha kutokana kwa mabenki, wengine kwa mashirika tofauti tofauti, na wanaposhelewesha malipo, hao wafanyabiashara huhangaika. Tunajua kwamba kama ni malipo ifanyike kwa kila mfanyabiashara ama mfanyikazi ambao ametoa huduma kwa serikali kuu ama kwa serikali ungatuzi. Hakika kama ni malipo, basi isikuwe kile tunasema kama kile kitabu kinaitwa shamba la wanyama, ambao kuna wale wanalipwa na kuna wale wanawekwa wakae wangojee miaka nenda miaka rudi, mpaka wengine wanahangaika na kufa kwa ajili ya shida zinazotokana na kukosa fedha. Hakika niseme, nikitoa mfano ya kaunti ya mahali ninatoka, ninajua ndoa iliyofunjika kwa sababu mama ndiye alisema atafanya biashara ndiposa amboreshe maisha yao. Akaomba pesa kwa kikundi ambacho ukopesha pesa, akaenda akafanya biashara. Mwaka ulipopita bila kulipwa, hiyo ndoa ilikuwa, mwanaume akainuka akamwambia, basi we uliomba pesa ndiposa tuende kuwa maskini, maana vitu zetu zitachotwa, mabati ya nyumba, paa imeng'olewa, baiskeli yao ikachukuliwa, masufuria ikachukuliwa, na ikawa ni shida tupu mpaka hiyo ndoa wakaachana. Kwa hivyo ningesema kama hii sheria ambao imependekezwa, mswada umependekezwa na Senator Mariam, itakuwa sheria, itakuwa ya muhimu sana kuhakikisha kwamba malipo inafanyika haraka iwezekanavyo, watu waendelee kukua kibiashara na isikuwe ni ya wachache ambao wanapata malipo, wengine wakiachwa wakihangaika. Jambo lingine ningesema kuchangia Bi Speaker ni kwamba hii malipo ya haraka itasaidia walio chini, ikuwe wanarika, ikuwe wamama, ndiposa wakakue pia kwa mapato ya kifedha kwa kujibidisha kufanya biashara. Lakini watu wanapohangaika, hata wale wanarika wakiamka, basi wataongopa kujiweka kwa mlingo wa kufanya biashara kwa sababu wanaona wenzao ama wale waliojaribu wakiwa wanahangaika. Kwa hivyo ningeomba niunge mkono hii mswada ya Senator Mariam na kusema kwamba ni muhimu sana. Hata itafanya kazi yetu kama maseneta wa counties tofauti tofauti kuonekana kweli kazi inafanyika na tunafikiria mambo ambao ni muhimu zaidi ambao inathiri maisha ya wananchi wa Kenya. Asante, ninaunga mkono.
Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to say from the word go that I support the bill and thank Senator Miriam for coming up with this bill. In the last parliament, Madam Speaker, The bill was there, it went almost all the stages and eventually it lapsed. I'm happy that she has brought it back because, Madam Speaker, there are many of our people, especially the small and medium businessmen who have done businesses both at the county level and national government, and they were not paid. Some are distressed, some have died, as one of the senators has said, some are even depressed, and some have divorced. The way our colleague has said, because before you an invoice, it means basically the entity would have advertised for a vacancy to supply or to do some work or to render some services. And then you bid, you go through all the tender process, you are awarded, you sign a contract, and then you do the job. After finishing, completing what you are supposed to do, you do an invoice. Then that is the time now issues arise, especially when there is a transition at the county government. The incoming governors, the new governors, most of them don't honor what the previous governors would have done. So, Madam Speaker, this bill is going to help our people. It will liberate our people to do business. Otherwise, most of the people have even given up doing business. I know of several people, especially in my county, who there's an old man who was selling petroleum products. He went into depression. And this is just one case. There are many cases. People have been sold. Banks have auctioned properties because you go to a bank because we don't have money. People don't have money. Business community don't have money to do business. You go to the bank and ask for a facility. And then shortly, the property that you put under charge is sold because the entity, the county government or the corporation or the national government department that gave you work have not honored the part of the bargain to pay. It's unfortunate, Madam Speaker. That is why this bill is timely. I'm happy especially what has been put as a fine of 1 million. For the person responsible, there are those who sit on the invoices. And if they don't pay as that particular person, you can be imprisoned up to 5 years or both. Madam Speaker, this is very serious because we cannot continue exposing our people because these are people who are hardworking. They want to earn. They want to take their children to school. They want to put food on the table. But as soon as you complete what you are doing and then you are taken around in cycles, maybe some want something to be facilitated before they pay, not knowing that people have taken loans in the bank or the margins that you get is way below what you can even give out. So, Madam Speaker, I think this is something that we need to ask our colleagues. Let us support this bill. And we'll also ask our colleagues in the other house, Madam Speaker, that they also speed up to pass the bill so that this law can be signed into law, this bill can be signed into law, so that our people can at least live decently. Madam Speaker, it's very serious. I'm sure even from where you come from, your county, people are suffering. And we want to tell the governors and its executive that, you know, when previous governors exit office, you don't punish those who are given business by outgoing governors because you will face the same issue. After 5 years or 10 years, you leave office, your friends you will have given work can be exposed to the same problems that you are exposing those who got businesses from outgoing governors. It's not a crime to do work, to be given work. And by, what is it?
Senator Kisang, do you wish to be informed?
I don't have a problem. You know, this is a governor also who has exited. I don't know if these people also have issues.
Proceed, Governor.
No, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to inform the Senator for Elgeyo Marakwet County that governors don't give business to anybody. It is a procurement process that awards to the lowest responsive bidder. So the assumption that governors give business, Madam Speaker, is not correct. I hope Senator for Elgeyo Marakwet is informed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm informed, but you know very well, Madam Speaker, the process, the procurement, the user will create a need. If there is a need maybe to do a particular road or to do maybe an hospital or supply medicine, and then the procurement department advertises, and then now the bidders or suppliers will bid. But you see, we cannot cheat ourselves, Honorable Speaker, a former retired governor of Washingishu. You will find that most of the people who will have gotten business during your time could be very closely associated with you. I mean, even in the executive, even in the national government. So basically, we cannot run away from it. That is why your predecessors have issues in paying.
What's your point of order, Senator Mandago?
5, Madam Speaker. I don't know whether the senator for Elgeyo Marakwet can prove that those who got business in Uasin-Gishu County are close to me, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, business is go through a proper procurement process. Mr. Speaker, is casting aspersions on having influence tenders, which I didn't do, Madam Speaker.
Senator Kisang, unless you are able to substantiate which governors gave which tenders, please withdraw.
Madam Speaker, I withdraw for the sake of my good friend. I know he was very open. I was just saying some counties maybe not. He was an open governor. That's why he was able to get second term and also be elected as a senator. So, Madam Speaker, I just want to finalize by saying that this bill is timely. It's actually overdue because there are those who have already died, there are those who are already depressed, there are those who have been divorced because of these same issues for not being paid. So, Madam Speaker, I support, and I ask my colleagues, please let's support it and we speed it up so that it goes to the next house and it is signed into law as soon as before this session ends, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I submit and support.
Senator Mogeni.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I first want to register my appreciation and congratulations to Senator Mariam Sheikh Omar for coming up with this bill, which, if enacted, will bring smiles to so many contractors who, Madam Speaker, have been subjected to untold suffering in the hands of our county governments and the national government. Mr. Speaker, listening to the figures that we owe suppliers, we wonder whether our country can be attractive to any serious business person, Mr. Speaker. Because if my figures don't mislead me, county governments alone are pending bills close to 157 billion. Madam Speaker, who can be attracted to do business with such an entity, owing 157 billion, Madam Speaker, to people who have either supplied items to you, or they have supplied services through professionals, or they have participated in developing account by engaging in a project, either building of an ECD classroom or making up a road, and you don't pay them. It is extremely shameful, Madam Speaker, that we as a country can be such an insensitive entity. It is really a shame, Madam Speaker, and this is not the way you treat investors or entrepreneurs. This is actually killing enterprises, Madam Speaker, because anybody, unless you are a thief, there is no way you can do business worth this amount of money without borrowing from our banks. And you know, Madam Speaker, this animal called a bank has no mercy. Banks have no mercy at all. If you don't pay, you default, they'll auction your assets. And when people are engaging with counties, they do so with an honest belief that once they do business, they will be paid, make some profit, and then they can grow their businesses. So I want to thank Senator Mariam for bringing up this bill, and I hope, Madam Speaker, our brothers in the National Assembly will see the wisdom behind this bill. I hope we will not have this shenanigan of telling us this is a money bill, therefore it cannot originate from the Senate. If you look at the content of this bill, and you are a member of Parliament, either National Assembly or Senate, you'll be out of your senses to oppose this bill, because we want to rescue businesses. Madam Speaker, anywhere in developed economies, whether you go to the US, you go to Australia, the best person to do business with, the biggest business partner is always government. But now, if you have a government that does not recognize that we need to grow businesses, then we are killing this economy, Madam Speaker. How are we going to create employment opportunities if we cannot allow businesses to grow? Madam Speaker, if you have visited countries like China, the businesses that you will see trading with Africa are actually small enterprises. But because they are able to do business with an economy that is disciplined, where your word is your bond. If you supply goods or you do a service, you will be paid promptly. And that way the business is able to grow. Madam Speaker, we are going to have a serious problem with employment unless we recognize as a country that the best way to deal with this problem of unemployment is by encouraging enterprises to grow. You know, if you give somebody business today, you pay them promptly. Tomorrow they will employ somebody to be a messenger. They will buy a vehicle, employ somebody to be a driver. They will grow and even start recruiting professionals, even engineers. And that way, we'll be able to deal with unemployment. We all think that UDA administration or any other government in office will wake up and create employment. Never. It cannot happen. It is us to create in place policies that will make it attractive to do business with government and other entities. That way you grow businesses. So I plead with members of National Assembly, once we deal with this bill and it crosses over to the other house, please let them look at the good content that is in the bill and fast track this bill so that we can save businesses. I have so many people. In Nyamira, we owe more than 1.7 billion. We owe contractors, suppliers, 1.7 billion. And Madam Speaker, these people come to our offices thinking that we will perform any magic. Yet, it's a problem that is beyond most of us. So once we enact this bill and there's a timeline within which to pay contractors, and if you don't pay, you are penalized through interest, we'll address this issue. And Senator Mandago, I'm sure Senator Chesang is not saying that governors directly award contract. We know the sweet language that is there in procurement laws. But there is what we call influence peddling by our governors. Not specifically you, but there are some governors who are good in peddling influence. They are the ones who determine who gets what contract. They determine their supporters, their friends, their associates, and those are the only people who are paid. The ones who are not associated with some governors are never paid. And then we have the problem of transition. For example, maybe the governor who took over from you will say, we will not pay anybody who did business with the Mandago regime. That's a big problem. And let's be candid and call out governors on this matter. Let them appreciate that governments have succession. You leave office, people who are there and they did business, you pay them. That's how you create faith in regimes, successive regimes. So also, let's have transparency, let us have accountability, let us have fairness on the way we award contracts and how we pay people who have done business for us. Madam Speaker, you know we have built a beautiful house called Bunge Towers. I've worked so hard as your representative in the Judicial Service, in the Parliamentary Service Commission, and set aside 51 offices for senators to move to those beautiful offices. But, Madam Speaker, we are not able to move because we are also in the thick of things. We are one of those culprits, people who are suppliers, contractors. You can imagine. So we are losing money, allowing senators, members of National Assembly to rent offices simply because we are not able to pay our suppliers on time. The contractors who are supposed to supply us with furniture are yet to be paid. So we can't allow senators and members of National Assembly to move to that beautiful building because we don't have furniture, Madam Speaker. And that building has been a project that has been there since 2013. But we are not able to complete it on time because we never pay our contractors on time, Madam Speaker. So this bill will address issues like what we are seeing in Bunge Towers. Because it's a shame, Madam Speaker. We promise and say members of Parliament, both houses, will occupy their offices by March. It's now passed. March comes, you go to government, you are told there is no money. Suppliers are not paid. You again leave it there, it's pending. Yeah. So I really support this bill, Madam Speaker, and hope that going forward, even before this bill is enacted, we can have discipline in our counties where we appreciate those who have done business with us. Let us have a system where first in, first payment, not the idea of the last in, first paid. That's corruption in it. And I also want to appeal to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. They are sleeping on the job. ESCC is sleeping on the job. I hope the new chair, the respected Bishop Oginde, will do things differently. Because, Madam Speaker, we need to fix the corruption cartels in our counties. There are many people, Mr. Speaker, who get contracts, Madam Speaker, who get contracts in our counties. They supply air or do nothing, but because they are connected with corruption cartels in counties, they are paid, but those who have done work, proper work, are not paid because of corruption. So I hope Bishop Oginde, fold up your sleeves, start work. We want to see, we are now into the 12th year of devolution. We have not seen even one, I'm not saying all governors are thieves, but we have not even seen even one governor who has been taken to court, tried, and convicted, so that he can send a message to others. I hope Bishop Oginde, you have a very good name, a very good CV, very good reputation. I hope you are going to deal with the corruption that is rampant in our counties. Madam Speaker, with those remarks, I support.
Senator Mandago.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill by Senator Mariam on prompt payments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as my colleagues have said, it is really unfortunate that in this nation, we strive to create enterprises, encourage innovations, encourage young people, women, PWDs, Madam Speaker, even through provisions of law to engage in business. But on the other hand, Madam Speaker, we end up killing the same enterprises by failing to pay them on time, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue of prompt payments and making sure that services consumed by both levels of government, Madam Speaker, are timely paid is a matter that is of urgency and deserves the support of this House. Because, Madam Speaker, so many lives and livelihoods have been destroyed. Madam Speaker, there are people who have spent 10, 15 years building their enterprises. But in one business engagement with either county or national government, Madam Speaker, it has destroyed whatever they have built over time. It is therefore, Madam Speaker, appropriate that this House supports this bill by Senator Mariam to make sure that those who deliberately fail to pay suppliers of goods or services are not only reprimanded, Madam Speaker, but I think we should even recommend, Madam Speaker, that they should not even serve in public service. because public service and public servants, Madam Speaker, have become killers of enterprises, have become reasons for diseases like blood pressure, Madam Speaker, because of failing to perform their duties while drawing salaries, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I therefore support this bill by Senator Mariam that prompt payments that are due to suppliers is not a request, but is a must that counties and national government to honor their obligation. And Madam Speaker, this bill is going to cure the habit of government overspending beyond the budget, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are a number of counties that have become mischievous in expanding their budget, Madam Speaker, through supplementaries. And they therefore end up with pending bills without resources in the future to pay. Madam Speaker, some counties, if they are to settle pending bills today, Madam Speaker, probably the current governors might not have anything else to do other than to pay. Therefore, this bill is not only going to ensure that there is prompt payment, but it is also going to address the issue of pending bills in future. And this is going to reduce the number of pending bills. If once passed as law, Madam Speaker, it is effectively enforced. Because also in this country, Madam Speaker, you know, we have good laws, but sometimes we lack enforcement of the same laws. Madam Speaker, on the issues of delays in terms of payment, Madam Speaker, this bill is also going to address transitional issues. And Madam Speaker, so many businesses suffer during transition, both in national and county governments. There is a habit that has been formed, Madam Speaker, that after 5 years, during transition, and there is change of administration, people come to office and pretend to do audit. We are not going to pay until there is a committee of pending bill. Those committees, Madam Speaker, are not committees to assess whether the payment is due or not. Those are avenues of corruption, of people going to ask the suppliers, the contractors, for money so that they are paid. Madam Speaker, this has been happening in a number of counties, and we have counties that the citizens are going to be petitioning this Senate. They have talked to us. They are willing to provide CCTVs of officers going to ask for bribes so that they can make payments for what is due. Madam Speaker, that is a habit we should not condone as a Senate, and as a House, we should support this bill so that we can cure most of those challenges that have created debts in enterprises in this country. Madam Speaker, those who delay payment sometimes make an assumption that the supplier is being paid, if a supplier is being paid 50 million, they think the supplier is going to get the 50 million. In that 50 million, Madam Speaker, there is VAT. In that 50 million, Madam Speaker, is a loan from a bank whose interests have outgrown even the profits that have been made, and some of the businesses would be running into losses. And Madam Speaker, that is why in this country, it has become extremely difficult for any business enterprise to build a serious credit worthiness in terms of doing business, because whenever they get business and there are delays in payments, there is therefore delays in servicing the loans, and it also affects their credit rating, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, these enterprises have no recourse, even after being pushed to CRB, after being pushed on credit worthiness in the banks, they have no recourse of claiming any form of damage from the procuring entities. And Madam Speaker, therefore, I support this bill, and I support the fact that suppliers who are not paid on time should charge interest on their dues until the time it is paid, and ensure that that procuring entity does not procure anything else, and then they clear with their bills. Madam Speaker, I therefore beg to submit and support this bill, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very, very important bill. Madam Speaker, the basis has been that quite a number of Kenyans, and especially with the devolution and coming up of the new counties, really suffered when they did works for the counties, build roads, build buildings. You even heard we dealt with a matter here, you know, whereby the county quarter. A contractor had gone to start building the county quarter, some problems cropped up, and a lot of businessmen went in with a lot of hope when the new counties came. But unfortunately, there were so many complications, and a lot of people, upon finishing the works, were actually never paid, and in a lot of cases resulted into extortion by brokers and the people pretending that they will help process the payments. In fact, I'm aware of businessmen and women who had done roads for the counties and followed up the money for so long so that they eventually gave up. I'm aware of people who did works for counties. Maybe the county has a function coming up and the contractor is told, hurry up with these, we'll pay you. And after the whole matter is done, the contractor will still not be paid, and there are delays, and some of them, you know, they're taking loans from banks and then eventually loans. You know, the banks auction these contractors while they wait, and upon auctioning, some of them have gone bankrupt, and in fact some of them developed diseases, high blood pressure, having gone through a lot of stress, and a lot of them died leaving their families in poverty and in debts, and even now unable to claim because of succession issues. And therefore, Madam Speaker, this is a very, very important bill. But there are a few things I want to point out as a lawyer. You know, when somebody gets judgment in court, and it's very different from what this bill is trying to address. You know, there's something called Government Proceedings Act, which makes it very difficult for anybody who has a claim against the government to sue the government. And even if you sue and you get judgment, you have to go through a very long process through the Attorney General's office to be compensated. And you are totally unable to auction the government. That's one of the issues which now has been addressed in this. And even when you have judgment against county governments, for example, or you have judgments against individuals, and this bill to me seems like it is addressing governments, pendy bills, generally, because the others are contracts which people can sort out. If, for example, an institution had given a contractor a construction of certain buildings, a college, let's say, or even a university, it still fall under this category. And a lot of times, because they enjoy perpetual succession, and they are, suable bodies under the law, because they either operate under an act of parliament or they are parastatal. And therefore, it becomes very complicated. At times, these matters delay a lot in court. And then sometimes they are sent to arbitration. And then after arbitration, the court now can come even and award interests, to act, for avoidance of interest. Then somebody will be allowed, to be able to move fast. And when you liken this bill to that, this bill has tried to import that process after court judgment, where interests are accruing, to these prompt payments when you must now pay within a certain time, and failure of which then certain interest starts accruing. And it will really need a lot of discipline, and I believe during the third reading we can amend this bill to give it more teeth. It has now teeth, it can bite, but it needs to bite more so that you push a government entity to feel fully compelled by law to pay somebody who is clear, have worked for the government, but there is a failure to work. There's something the Honorable Mandago has addressed, and I think as a governor is very experienced. Some people also, we had very many fraudulent contractors in the counties. They will not follow the BQ. If it's a road, maybe it needs culverts, it needs maraming, it needs watering, and it needs pressing so that it can be a durable road. And then somebody will just wait just before the lanes. having colluded with some county officials, just go and grade the road, and it will be cleared as if the full BQ was followed. So in situations like that, you know, you need institutions to come in. You need experts. You need, you know, the ESCC to come in handy. Such a payment, then you'll have a justification to delay if there is an investigation going on, or if there is a criminal matter which has arisen out of it. And therefore, some of the governors then, if there is transition, will come and say, sorry, we can't pay this for ABCD reason. And if we are to pay, this is the real value which was covered. And then, you know, it becomes very complicated for such a contractor to be paid. So at third reading, we need to address fraudulent contractors or situations whereby the BQ has not been followed. In the case of a construction of a building, then it means you may not even follow the building code. And there is also, you know, laws come together to strengthen one affair. Now we have a building code which has been in existence for many years in many countries. Ours is just coming in as a regulation. And all those have to be followed so that by the time the government is making a payment, then it is making a payment for real. So once we avoid that fraudulent bit, then a contractor who has faithfully and followed the BQ and has worked for a county government or the national government, surely must not be frustrated by the government. We have a very sad case in Tuake Dam now, whereby there are about 5 subcontractors. And these 5 subcontractors have not, even employees have not been paid for 3 months. So the subcontractors stopped doing the subcontracts in Tuake Dam because we did a bill here of you know, a budget for 2023, which was amended. There was supplementary one, which now removed monies, 5 billion shillings, about 5 billion shillings, funded by African Development Bank from that particular project and took it to other projects. And within a month or so, the project is stalled. And right now it has stopped, waiting for supplementary 2, which will be done when the National Assembly comes into back, and which by the time it is concluded, obviously the works will have stalled and we are in breach of contract as a government. Therefore, we want a situation whereby when there are such projects, because they are, Tuake Dam is not the dam being constructed, Konza City, the same thing is happening, so that this law must also compel the government. And I have not seen that coming out very strong, to be able to honor, you know, contracts it has with the contractors and subcontractors, and especially where there is international funding or outsourced funding, although it is subject to budget processing, then it means the government has a duty to comply with the contract. Because what happens when there is failure of compliance of a contract? It's like nobody's land, no man's land. You know, you find that interests are accruing, the government is in breach of contract, eventually the matter may go to court, and the government will pay even almost double what originally would have So we need a situation where we need a law which compels the government to save government funding, but there not be carelessness or negligence in the handling of projects. Therefore, the prompt payment is very, very important. It saves the government money, it saves time for everybody, it saves the businessmen, it helps the economy of the country, because a frustrated businessman whose bills and monies have not been paid, it means also they will not pay others and the economy will stall. But once you pay contractors promptly, they'll be able to pay the people they had employed, they'll be able to pay taxes in good time, and they'll be able to create employment. They'll solve so many problems when they are paid promptly, and they will be able to advance their businesses. But when you kill and crash almost all contractors in the country, and especially in the counties, then what are we doing to the economy of Kenya? So I believe we have to add a few things during third reading, and when we add those things in third reading, I believe this law will become better, and contractors, subcontractors will be paid promptly, and the country will save money. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Eddy.
I thank you, Madam Speaker. I do want to, first of all, note that this bill does actually not only propose on how we can have an effective legal tool to promote businesses and cure late payments in county government, but also in national government. And that means that with regards to goods, services, and works that are procured in both levels of government, there is a need to cure this issue of late payment. And I think that to that end, it is a very well-meaning bill. But sometimes these well-meaning bills can also come with some challenges that I think that in the case of this particular bill does indeed outweigh the benefit that we might have. And I say so because, number one, reason why it will be difficult for me to support this bill is because when we look at the issues like payment in counties, and we have seen this time without number, availability of funds is a very major component of how payments are done to contractors, to people who are offering services. And Madam Speaker, this availability of funds is a function of the exchequer, which goes with revenue collections. We know that even as we speak right now, Madam Speaker, we have struggled as a house, and I sit in Budget and Finance. I also sit in CPIC, where we try to hold the Treasury, the National Treasury, accountable as much as we can. And sometimes you find pressures that are indeed impossible to deal with, where the National Treasury has had serious exchequer demands, yet they have not received serious exchequer receipts, to the extent that balancing that out becomes a very difficult sense. So for instance, right now, we do know that counties do have money that has not been given to counties since March, April, May, and we are going to the next year. In such a case, availability of funds is a problem. So then if you put a punitive bill on people who do not have control of this, it becomes a problem. Secondly, Madam Speaker, this bill proposes interest rates to be increased on pending bills, for these suppliers. You see, for every action, there is a reaction. When you impose something like interest rates on bills that have not been paid, you actually also increase bills for that particular government entity or procurement entity. So for instance, if a particular entity owes a particular service provider X, and then you impose that interest rate on them for that late payment, which sometimes is out of their control for reasons that I've explained, like availability of funds, then it means that that particular interest becomes another pending bill. And that is something that we must seriously consider. And the moment you've also brought about expansive levels of interest in things like pending payments, the bill ought to have actually thought about how do you fund that interest, one. And number two, the bill should also have thought about how then do you report on that interest? Because when you look at how interests are done, definitely you'll want the same accounting officers that you're trying to keep or hold accountable at the end of every financial year to do a different report on the interest rates. Do they do this report to CBK, or do they do this report to National Treasury? This makes it problematic. And further, if you were to be more adventurous in strict financial terms, you will also go and look at, do you want these interests to be compounded, or are they going to be simple interest? And then, Madam Speaker, then things just becomes complicated when you think about expanding that interest issue. So that makes it very difficult for me to support the bill. And Madam Speaker, additionally, if you're going to impose something like interest on payments that counties or even national government is not doing because of other issues like delay of funds, then it goes without saying that you must put an equal equation to the other side, whereby if there is an accelerated payment to a particular service provider, then does it mean that that service provider then has to discount the county or the national entity? That must be considered in the interest of including the kind of interests that are proposed by this bill. Madam Speaker, I also think that proposed penalties under offenses in the clause, I think 7 by the bill to the accounting officers is a little bit exorbitant, Madam Speaker. And this is because of the reason that I said. If the exchequer does not guarantee that there will be availability of funds, then it goes without saying that any accounting officer also will not have control on the availability of that fund. So then how do you account for that lack of control of a procurement entity where the officer does not have control on that availability? Then you punish them based on timelines and not based on availability of funds. That becomes extremely problematic. And we have seen it even if you look at the County Government Act, whereby both the PFM and the County Government Act in the level of counties does establish what we call the county treasury. And in the county treasury, the head of that treasury is actually supposed to be the CEC finance. But when you look at our IFMIS system, Madam Speaker, today you will find that the IFMIS system, the way it is coded at the controller of budgets, we have somebody called Approver 2, Approver 1, and people approve in different levels. And it's not strictly exposed to the adherence of who then the accounting officer becomes there. So in a place where you have punished an accounting officer with a bill of 5 million or 5 years jail term, where it was completely out of their control, how then do you account for that kind of officer? Madam Speaker, I also think that it is critical that before, as a Senate, we think about passing this bill, we need to look at the progression between this bill and the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2015, which was actually ratified and approved by this Parliament in 2020. Because I find a lot of what has been proposed by this bill as having been taken care of by the PPAD Act of 2015. And I just wanted to help Senator Mariam in looking at some of the classes that have come here. And I think that they're the most substantive classes. I didn't pick all of them, but the most substantive ones. So if you look at section 4 of this on the prompt payment of accounts, the timelines within which payments have to be made to contractors is set at 60 days. And the period starts from the day of the receipt of the invoice. That's what this is proposing. Further, goods must be properly certified before payment. But this is actually addressed by Regulation 150 of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2020, exactly the same way. If you look at Section 5 of what is proposed here on priority of payment, this is also provided for in Regulation 139(1) and 6 of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2020. If you also go to Section 7, which I had also referred to, on interest rates that I've actually really spent time talking about, if you look at Section 140 of Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, it provides the same, but with a more scientific method on how do you deal with the questions of reporting, how do you deal with the question of computation, how do you deal with the questions of funding those interests. So it's already actually provided for. If you look at Section 9 of on offenses, which is what I think is becoming a motive from the House, because people are talking from the perspective of paying different service providers from an emotive perspective. Section 9 is actually a replica of Section 176A(c) of Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, which actually provides for penalty for delay in payment beyond contractual period. And Madam Speaker, this bill is also very innovative around looking at the invoicing system, which I think is a very good idea, as captured in Section 6 on the return on invoice. But this one could also be well addressed under the contractual agreement between the supplier and the procurement entity under dispute mechanism that's already provided for under Public Procurement Assets and Disposal Act. And Madam Speaker, lastly, my attention was drawn to Section 8 on fair dealing, which I think is a valid issue. But on this fair dealing, actually, if you look at the Public Procurement Act, there's a proposal that this should be, actually there's not a proposal but a regulation that this should, that contract should be provided on the contract obligations of each party, so that each party is held accountable. While it is a motive that these different service providers must be paid for their services, it is equally important that you equally hold them accountable. Which brings me to another point here, Madam Speaker, on why I think that the bill would have been more prolific if you had done segmentation of which kind of service providers are you talking about. Because a big contractor who is doing roads in our counties or who is working on SGR, for instance, does not need to be protected to the extent that they are paid 30 days. But if you're talking about SMEs or micro enterprises that you segmented on this particular bill, then you make it possible to have a conversation that is more segmented and more targeted in helping the businesses that are more at risk. And that way, then even the idea of bottom-up agenda is actually well taken care of. Madam Speaker, I also think that the bill, for it to have been more prolific, and perhaps this could be an amendment that I could propose, is if you had looked at the scope of the bill with regards to where is the bulk of the spending in government. Today we know, Madam Speaker, that in national government, about 63% of the spending goes to cost on the current budget that is mostly employees. And when you look at it from that perspective, when you go to counties, we also have about 70% of money that is spent in counties is about employees. What does this mean? This means that when you look at things like deductions, whereby you want to look at pension deductions or any other deductions that are due, and the bulk of pending bills that you're seeing in counties is actually employee deductions. For instance, we know that now LAP Trust as well as county pension fund are owed by counties up to 50 billion, Madam Speaker. If you cannot be able to address that with this kind of bill, because that's also a payment ticket. That is why you needed to, we need to look at the scope of how do you expand this. Then the bill loses meaning, because then you will have more interest put on a small section of total spending of government vis-a-vis where you should actually be targeting, and where we are having more interest that are accrued outwards. Outwards here I mean, if we have got a pending bill like KRA deductions, and KRA is getting that money from counties in terms of fines and interest, and that is what we should be able to curb, because counties will pay for them later, as well as national government. That scope.
Order Senator Tobiko and Senator Seki.
That scope is what I would have really wanted to see in this bill dealt with. And lastly, Madam Speaker, I think that because it's a bill that looks entirely on general payments, I think that there is a concept of exemption whereby some spending can be spending on operations and contingencies that you do not have control over. So for instance, right now, Madam Speaker, if you look at the crisis in the northern part of Kenya, where there's serious military spending that can sometimes require some immediate military procurement that has to be done, or even the Shakahola monies that I just came from in Kilifi, where you need a serious intervention and a serious spending right there, and sometimes contractual drawings of those natures might take a whole different turn based on emergency basis. How then do you punish accounting officers based on blatant reasoning around timelines and pure delays of funds? So if these are the issues that could have been captured in the bill, I think that it then would have been a more holistic bill. But in the current format, I think that we run the danger of a serious replication of the PPAD Act of 2015 approved in 2020, and therefore, Madam Speaker, I oppose this bill, not out of any utter disrespect for the kind of intellect and work that my sister Senator Mariam has put into this bill, but purely because some of these proposals have got overreaching effect in terms of how effective and how efficient our counties can be in terms of managing this kind of procurement processes. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Sam Nyamu, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start by congratulating Senator Mariam for taking up this issue that has been a real thorn in the flesh in our country for contractors and entrepreneurs. I cannot say it is timely. I will say it is long overdue. My experience, Madam Speaker, from the county of Nairobi, where we have over 60 billion pending bills spanning from a period of over 10 years, the issue of pending bills is big business in Nairobi. It has been a thriving field for cartels in Nairobi, where they peddle influence. And if you know the governor, then your payment is given priority. Madam Speaker, this is a very unfortunate situation because as government, we procure services that go to our people, and then the people who did the work end up suffering and even facing death, paying the ultimate price for it. Madam Speaker, I think this bill is going to cure the challenges of government entities procuring services and works that are not budgeted for. Some of the issues that Senator Eddy has brought up are definitely an eye-opener, but I think this just means that the bill needs more work. I think it should not be the intent of the bill is what we should work with. If we need some amendments, if we need to work on it, but there is dire need for regulation of our pending bills and prompt payments in our counties and also in the national government, Madam Speaker. And with that, I support.
Senator Shakila.
Asante, Mheshimiwa Speaker. Mimi nasimama kuunga mkono hii mswada wa Mheshimiwa Mariam, Senator Mariam, kwa naunga ukiwa na mabadiliko as in amendments. I support with amendments. Mheshimiwa Speaker, mambo ya kusema watu kucheleweshwa malipo yao ni shida ambayo imekabili hii nchi kwa nyanja za kuanzia serikali kuu mpaka serikali za county. Na ni jambo kuna muhimu itungiwe sheria ambayo itakuja kutekelezwa na itakuwa ni sheria ambayo itakuwa ni kama funzo na kuweza kufanya serikali ziwajibike kikamilifu. Kwanza ningependa kusema mradi wowote ambao utakuwa umefanywa ama unatekelezwa ni mradi ambao huwa umefanywa bajeti yake, umebajetiwa. Na mradi ukiwa bajetiwa huwa tayari kuna pesa kwa huo mradi. Kwa hivyo hakuna sababu yoyote ya mradi kama ule kukosa kulipwa ama yule mtekelezaji wa hiyo mradi akose kulipwa haki yake kwa ukosefu wa fedha. Ni lazima mtu akipeana huduma kwa county ama kwa serikali awe atapewa malipo yake kwa muda unaotarajiwa, na kama hatapewa malipo yake basi kuna hatua ni muhimu zichukuliwe. Mheshimiwa Speaker, kuna njia ambazo kwamba zinaweza wekwa katika huu mswada ziweze kuzuia matatizo kama hayo. Kwa mfano nikisema tuseme kama mwenzangu mheshimiwa ameongea juu ya kwamba ya faida kwamba pesa ikicheleweshwa imewekwa faida. Kitu kama faida tunaweza kutoa kwa huu mswada na tuseme kwamba pesa ilipwe vile vile bila faida. Hiyo ni kitu inaweza fanyiwa amendment. Kitu chengine mheshimiwa ni kwamba ni lazima mtu akipeana huduma awe atalipwa pesa yake kwa wakati unaofaa. Hakuna haki ya kucheleweshwa, na wale wahusika, kwa mfano kama ni upande wa county, ni governor ametoka yule ameingia mwingine, kuwe na mipangilio kamili ya kufanya, kutakuwa na handover, proper handover ya kusema kwamba haya ndio mambo ambayo yamebakishwa yako nyuma, na hizi ndizo kazi ambazo kwamba ninakukabidhi uwe utaendelea nazo katika shughuli zako za miaka 5, ili kuonekane kwamba hakutakuwa na shida yule governor ambaye ameingia aseme kwamba mimi haya siyajui, haya nihusu. Na hiyo ambao kwamba sengine utakuta miradi imeachwa katikati, na miradi ile imelipiwa pesa nyingi na ile ni pesa ya mlipa kodi, na yule governor ameingia huwa hataki kushughulika kulipa ile pesa, na pengine ni kitu ambacho kwamba ni cha muhimu, ni huduma ambayo kwamba wananchi wanataka, ni huduma wananchi wameitisha, lakini utakuta wale viongozi ambao wameingia mamlakani wanakataa kutekeleza yale majukumu kwa sababu ya kukataa kufanya yale malipo. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naona huu ni mswada wa maana sana. Unafaa tu upigwe msasa. Ukishapigwa msasa kikamilifu kutokana na maoni ya maseneta ama waheshimiwa, na hakika huu mswada utafanya kazi yake mzuri, na pia utapunguza zile shida na yale majukumu ambayo kwamba yanaachiwa wale wenzao ambao kwamba wanaenda wakiachia wale wanaoingia na kadhalika. Kwa hivyo la muhimu ninaloona mimi mheshimiwa, mswada huu unafaa upigiwe msasa alafu tuupitishe kama Senate. Asante Mheshimiwa Speaker.
Senator Tobiko.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the intent of this bill is good. Madam Speaker, we have experienced across the country, at both levels of government, the national government, the county governments, Madam Speaker, a lot of contractors and suppliers of goods and services have suffered immeasurable, consequences because of delayed payments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I therefore rise to support this bill with amendments, Madam Speaker, because if we talk about interest on delayed payments, Madam Speaker, it may become a challenge. It may, become untenable. But, Madam Speaker, the general intent of this bill is good, and will also bring discipline to, the contracting agencies, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with the changes in governments at the county levels, very different governments coming in even after 5 years, we have seen contractors and suppliers who have been, whose payments have been delayed. Others have never been paid. People have suffered with bank loans. They have suffered the collateral damage. People's properties have been auctioned by the banks, Madam Speaker, because people take loans in order to be able to supply, in order to be able to deliver these goods and services, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have actually seen Kenyans who have suffered to an extent of even, getting sick. Others have lost their lives in other situations, Madam Speaker, because of depression. Family properties have been put into jeopardy, Madam Speaker, because of delayed payments, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, what I see this bill curing is, it will bring discipline into the whole supply chain, Madam Speaker, that we become disciplined. We should have good intentions when you advertise for goods and services. Then you should also be ready to pay, Madam Speaker, especially because, as the Senator Shakila has said, these are already, things that are in the budget. These are things that have been budgeted for. And counties, the various levels of government, it's not only counties, must always advertise for what they can pay, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have also seen, county governments that, or governors who have left a lot of debts, pending bills for the next government to come in, Madam Speaker. And so it is sort of collapses services at the county levels, because the first thing a governor addresses when they come in is to try and sort out pending bills. Madam Speaker, we must also insist on payments that can only be done after verification, due verification that these services were delivered, that these goods were delivered. Madam Speaker, because we have in this country where corruption has taken root at all levels of government, Madam Speaker, people have supplied nothing and they come and demand payment, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, it is important that audits are done, that forensic audits are done, make sure that the goods have been delivered, services have been delivered, and payment should be done, Madam Speaker. And so I do agree with the members who have spoken earlier that whereas the intention of the bill is very good and will bring discipline into the whole area of procurement, Madam Speaker, we may not necessarily insist on interests, because also we have seen counties that have not necessarily delayed payments, not of their own making, but because of delays of allocations from Treasury, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I do support, Madam Speaker, we have seen also situations, and I think this bill should address situations whereby we have encouraged our young people to go into business with governments at both levels, national and counties, and also the women and disabled people, but in the process, they get themselves into a quagmire which they don't understand, where a field where there are cartels, a field where nobody even respects the portion or the 30% that was meant for the youth and meant for the disabled people and for the women, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for our young people to be able to prosper in this field, we must bring discipline into this field. For women to be able to do business with government, Madam Speaker, this field has to be streamlined. And it can only be streamlined if there are prompt payments, Madam Speaker. And so, Madam Speaker, I support because it is very important. It is very important that government becomes disciplined. It is very important that goods are paid for. It's very important, Madam Speaker, that we become disciplined in all fields, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have visited other countries, and we have seen the kind of, and even private entities in this country, Madam Speaker, do pay on delivery. Madam Speaker, we have seen private entities, private enterprises are prompt in their kind of dealings with the public or with their suppliers, Madam Speaker. Discipline must also be brought into the public service in terms of procurement, Madam Speaker, and I think this law is meant to do exactly that with a few amendments, Madam Speaker. It's a very good law, Madam Speaker, which we need to support. Thank you very much.
I think there's no other contributor. I now call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Madam Speaker, I thank senators who contributed to this bill. They are 13 in number. I thank Cheraragei, Senator Chemera, Senator Beatrice, Senator Abbas, Senator Beth Sengo, Senator Kisan, Senator Omegeni, Senator Mandago, Senator Manzo, Senator Eddy, Senator Karen Nyamu, Senator Shakila, and Senator Tobiko. Thank you very much for that. Madam Speaker, this bill, prompt bill, is just Kenyans are behind. In other continents, like Canada and other parts of the world, they have this bill, which is enacting. Madam Speaker, this bill, it has, it will solve so many problems, like our business economy, because if you engage individual to the county business or national government, if you do business with them, after the business done, supposed to be paid immediately. But because of that, it leads to so many issues which has been highlighted by our senators. It end up in auctioning of resources, properties, which will lead to depressions, mental health, and most of the people who engage in this who engage in the business with county or national, most of them are paralyzed because of depression and mentally. Madam Speaker, it also led to, as senators also raised, family break-in, that is divorce and some. Madam Speaker, as Senator Eddy quoted some section of the bill, which is saying it's duplications. Madam Speaker, those are regulations. And regulations, the bill supersedes the regulations. If it is there in, as a regulations, it's not, it is not enacted because of it is regulations, but if it is a bill, people will be disciplined on payments of the payment of bills in prompt payment. Madam Speaker, because if it is now regulations, most of them expires with time. Madam Speaker, with that, the bill is supposed to be passed so that our bottom-up citizens who are in small businesses, SMEs, can have circulation of money immediately, because if you receive money immediately, can be cheaper in other businesses to increase our economy. Madam Speaker, when it comes to interest rates, if the way Eddy is proposing to remove If we do that, people will not be punctual to pay bills. But if there is some pinching somewhere, there must be action to be taken. Madam Speaker, when it comes to fund, delay on fund by treasuries, as Madam Speaker, when it comes to payment bill, pending bill, most of them is deliberately done, not by delay of payment, delay of fund from treasury. So to avoid that, deliberations, we need at least some action so that those deliberation actions is seized. Madam Speaker, this bill will solve so many things. On economy, it will save economy, and some also senators raise on transition issues. Because a governor come in and will say, this is not my payment, it's another, I will not do that one, and let me pay my bill first. Madam Speaker, we have to work FIFO method. That is first come, first serve. It's not a matter of who is in the office and who is not in the office. Madam Speaker, to that, we need to be the same level with other continents, other developing countries. So, Madam Speaker, on that, I reply the bill. Madam Speaker. I request that pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, you defer putting of the question to the later date. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
It is deferred to tomorrow. The putting of the question is deferred to tomorrow. Next order.
Order number 11, the Learners with Disabilities Bill, Senate Bill number 4 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Kamar is not around. Can that be deferred? Next order.
Order number 12, the Employment Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 11 of 2022, second reading.
That's Senator Cherarke, not present, deferred.
Order number 13, the Agricultural and Livestock Extension Services Bill, Senate Bills number 12 of 2022, second reading.
That's by Senator Mutinda, not present, deferred.
Order number 14, the Mung Bills Bill, Senate Bills number 13 of 2022, second reading.
That's Senator Wambua, not present, deferred. Next order.
Order number 15, the Startup Bill, Senate Bills number 14 of 2022, second reading.
Senator Crystal Asige, not present, deferred. Next order.
Order number 16, the Tea Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 1 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Hilary Sigay, not present, deferred. Next order.
Order number 18, motion adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations on a statement sought on the relocation of National Government Administrative Services from Chuka Town to Katwana County Headquarters in Tharaka Nithi County.
Not order number 17?
Sorry, so order number 17, the Konza Technopolis Bill, Senate Bills number 2 of 2023, second reading.
Senator Gloria Uroba, not present, deferred. Next order.
Order number 18, motion, adoption of the report of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations on a statement sought on the relocation of a national government administrative services from Chuka Town to Katwana County headquarters in Tharaka Nithi County.
Senator Methu, not present, deferred.
Order number 19, motion, compensation to Kenyan victims of the 1998 bombing of the United States Embassy in Nairobi.
Senator Mudhama, not present, deferred. Honorable Senators, there being no other business on the order paper, the Senate stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 24th May 2023 at 9:30 a.m.